The weight of the crown bore down upon Thorn long before it ever touched his head. Standing at the window of the ancient stone tower that had housed 13 generations of Alpha Kings before him, he watched as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. Tomorrow, at this exact moment, he would no longer be Crown Prince Thorn, heir to the United Werewolf Kingdoms. He would be Alpha King Thorn, ruler of all 7 major packs and protector of their ancient ways. A cool autumn breeze carried the scents of pine and wild sage through the open window, mingling with the musty aroma of aged parchment that always clung to the royal chambers. Thorn inhaled deeply, savoring these final moments of relative freedom. At 40 years old, he had spent his entire life preparing for this burden. Yet nothing could truly prepare anyone for the isolation of ultimate power. "Your father wishes to speak with you." Malcolm stood in the doorway, his weathered face as impassive as ever. The old advisor had served 3 generations of Alpha Kings, his loyalty unwavering through rebellions, peace treaties, and the slow, inexorable evolution of werewolf society. His silver hair was pulled back in the traditional style of royal advisors, and though he moved with the slight stiffness of age, his eyes remained sharp and alert. "Tell him I'll be there shortly," Thorn replied, his voice deep and resonant. Malcolm lingered, his gaze drifting to the ancient tapestry that hung on the far wall. Woven in threads of silver, gold, and midnight blue, it depicted the first Alpha King uniting the 7 warring packs beneath a blood moon. "The prophecy troubles you." It wasn't a question. Malcolm had always possessed an uncanny ability to read Thorn's thoughts. 13 kings shall rule with honor and might," Thorn recited, the words as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. "But the 13th must choose between crown and heart's delight. Should he falter in this choice, darkness falls eternal night." Malcolm's expression remained carefully neutral. "Prophecies are often misinterpreted, my lord. The ancient tongue is imprecise." Thorn turned back to the window, his broad shoulders tense beneath his formal attire. "I've been having dreams, Malcolm. The same dream, night after night. A young woman with eyes like amber fire. I've never seen her before, yet in the dream I know her. She approaches me with a silver dagger, and just as the blade touches my heart, I wake." Malcolm's silence spoke volumes. When he finally responded, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Some believe dreams are messages from our ancestors." "And what do you believe?" "I believe, my lord, that you will face challenges unlike any Alpha King before you. But I also believe you were born for this burden." Thorn nodded, though the weight in his chest did not lighten. He had not told Malcolm everything about the dream. He had not mentioned that in those final moments before the blade pierced his flesh, he felt not fear, but a profound sense of rightness, as if the dagger was merely opening a door that had always been meant to swing wide. "I'll go to my father now." The corridors of the ancient fortress were alive with activity as servants prepared for the coronation ceremony. Thorn moved through them like a ship cutting through water, his presence commanding immediate respect. Werewolves of all 7 major packs had converged on the ancient ceremonial grounds for the occasion, filling the fortress and the surrounding valley with their scents and sounds. King Alaric II awaited his son in the royal study, seated before the massive hearth that had warmed 13 generations of werewolf royalty. Once a powerful figure whose mere presence could silence a room, Alaric had diminished in recent years. His once robust frame had grown thin, though he still carried himself with regal dignity. The crown of the Alpha King, crafted from ancient silver that predated even their earliest written histories, rested on a velvet cushion beside him. "My son," Alaric said, extending a hand as Thorn entered. Thorn knelt before his father, taking the offered hand between his own. "Father, tomorrow, the weight of our people passes to you." Alaric's voice, once thunderous in council meetings, had faded to a rasp. "Are you prepared? I've studied our laws, our history, our alliances. I've trained in combat with the finest warriors. I've mediated disputes between rival packs." Thorn paused. "But I do not know if anyone can truly be prepared for this burden." A thin smile crossed Alaric's face. "That answer, more than any other, tells me you are ready. Only fools believe themselves fully prepared for power." He gestured to the crown. "Do you know why our crown is made of silver? The very metal that can burn our flesh?" Thorn nodded. to remind the king that power brings pain and that he must endure suffering for the good of all. Yes, but there is more. Alaric leaned forward, his eyes suddenly intense. The silver reminds us that we are vulnerable, that despite our strength, our speed, our long lives, we can be destroyed. It is a reminder of humility. Alaric reached for the crown, his fingers hovering just above the polished metal. I have ruled for 30 years. I have seen peace and conflict, abundance and hardship. I have made decisions that cost lives and saved many more. Through it all, this crown has reminded me of my mortality. He looked up at his son, his gaze penetrating. But you, Thorn, you will face a test unlike any Alpha King before you. The prophecy of the 13th king hangs over you like a shadow. I do not fear prophecies, Thorn said, though both knew it was not entirely true. Perhaps you should. Alaric sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. There is something I have kept from you, something about the nature of your dreams. Thorn tensed. You know about my dreams? Malcolm has kept me informed. Your dream of the girl with the dagger is not merely a dream, my son. It is a warning. There exists a curse, ancient and powerful, bound to a bloodline nearly as old as our own. This curse compels one of their line to assassinate the Alpha King during his coronation ceremony. The revelation struck Thorn like a physical blow. Why have you never told me this? Because I hoped it was not true. Because I prayed that the curse had died with the bloodline that carried it. Alaric's hands trembled slightly. But Malcolm has discovered that the bloodline survives. The curse lives on, and tomorrow, during your coronation, someone will attempt to take your life. Miles away in a modest dwelling at the edge of the northern Pine Pack's territory, 15-year-old Lyra knelt beside her grandmother's bed, grinding herbs for a healing poultice. Morgana, once the powerful alpha female of the northern Pine Pack, had been growing weaker for weeks, her once vibrant spirit diminishing like a candle burning down to its final flicker. The moonflower should be ground finer, Morgana instructed, her voice thin but still commanding. Its essence releases best when it's nearly dust. Lyra nodded, applying more pressure to the stone mortar. The sweet, pungent aroma of the moonflower filled the small room, mingling with the scents of dried herbs that hung in bunches from the ceiling beams. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the pine forest that gave their pack its name. Like this? Lyra asked, tilting the mortar to show her grandmother the fine powder. Morgana nodded, satisfaction briefly illuminating her tired features. You have a natural touch with the old ways, child. Your mother never had the patience for it. Pride bloomed in Lyra's chest. Her mother, Freya, was respected throughout the pack for her hunting prowess, but the ancient knowledge of herbs and healing had skipped a generation, passing from Morgana directly to Lyra. Now add 3 drops of silver water, Morgana instructed. Lyra reached for the small, crystal vial that contained water collected during the last full moon. As she carefully counted the drops into the mixture, a sudden change in the air made her pause. The temperature in the room plummeted, her breath becoming visible in small clouds. The hairs on her arms stood on end, and a sensation like static electricity crackled across her skin. Grandmother? She asked, turning toward the bed. Morgana had gone rigid, her back arched unnaturally. Her eyes, normally a warm amber, like Lyra's own, had turned completely black, as if the pupils had expanded to consume the iris. A silvery mist began to swirl around her frail body, carrying the acrid scent of sulfur and something older, something that smelled of rage and ancient power. Lyra dropped the vial, scrambling to her grandmother's side. Grandmother, what's happening? Morgana's head turned toward Lyra with an unnatural jerking emotion. When she spoke, the voice was not her own. It was deeper, resonant with power and hatred. The debt passes to the daughter of the daughter, the voice hissed through Morgana's lips. When the new Alpha King is crowned, when the words of power are spoken, when the moon reaches her fullness, you will kill him, Lyra. Terror froze Lyra in place, her hands clutching her grandmother's shoulders. Grandmother, please. The black eyes fixed on her with terrible intensity. You will strike him down, or your entire pack will burn in flames that no water can extinguish. This is the curse of blood and bone sworn in the ancient tongue. It cannot be broken by mortal means. The silvery mist intensified, swirling faster around Morgana's body. Lyra tried to pull her grandmother free of it, but her hands passed through the mist as if it were solid ice, burning her skin with cold fire. "Grandmother, fight it! Come back!" For a brief moment, Morgana's eyes cleared, returning to their natural amber. Recognition and love flickered there, along with devastating sorrow. "Lyra," she whispered in her own voice, "find the mirror of truth. It will show what cannot be seen." Then the blackness consumed her eyes once more, and with a final rattling breath, Morgana collapsed back onto the bed. The silvery mist dissipated like morning dew under harsh sunlight, leaving the room suddenly, oppressively normal. But Morgana was gone. Her body remained, but the vital spark that had made her the formidable woman who had led their pack for decades had vanished. In its place, Lyra felt something new and terrible take root inside her own chest, a seed of darkness that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The curse had been passed, and Lyra knew with a bone-deep certainty that transcended rational thought that she would now bound to fulfill it. The 3 weeks that followed passed in a blur of grief and mounting dread. The Northern Pine Pack mourned their beloved elder, but none felt the loss more keenly than Lyra and her mother. Freya, devastated by her mother's death, withdrew into herself, barely emerging from her chambers. Lyra's father, Gareth, did his best to comfort them both. But how could anyone offer comfort when Lyra carried death in her veins? On the 7th day after Morgana's death, Lyra finally gathered the courage to speak with Elder Orion, the oldest and wisest member of their pack's council. If anyone would know about the curse that now bound her, it would be him. Elder Orion received her in his study, a circular room built around the trunk of an ancient pine tree. Books and scrolls lined the walls, and the air smelled of parchment, pine resin, and the subtle musk of wolf. The old man's white hair and beard contrasted with his dark skin, weathered by centuries of sun and wind. His eyes, a startling blue that seemed to see beyond the physical realm, watched Lyra with compassion as she recounted what had happened. When she finished speaking, Elder Orion remained silent for a long moment. Then he rose from his chair with a soft groan and retrieved an ancient leather-bound volume from a high shelf. "What you describe," he said as he carefully opened the book, "is a soul-binding curse, one of the oldest and most powerful forms of magic known to our kind." He turned yellowed pages with reverent care until he found what he sought. "Here, the curse of blood and bone, written in the language of the first wolves." The page displayed intricate symbols that seemed to shift and move as Lyra tried to focus on them. Just looking at them made her head ache and her vision blur. This curse was created during the time of divisions, when the 7 great packs were first forming, Elder Orion explained. It was meant to prevent any one pack from gaining too much power over the others. But its use was forbidden when the first Alpha King united our people. "Then why would my grandmother be affected by it?" Lyra asked. "Why would it pass to me?" Elder Orion closed the book with a heavy sigh. "That child is a darker tale, one that begins 50 years ago with 2 sisters who loved and hated each other in equal measure." He settled back into his chair, his blue eyes distant with memory. "Your grandmother Morgana and her sister Celine were the twin daughters of the previous Alpha of the Northern Pine Pack. From birth, they were exceptional, blessed with rare gifts even among our kind. Morgana could heal wounds that would kill others. Celine could see glimpses of possible futures." "I never knew my grandmother had a sister," Lyra said, startled by this revelation. "Few speak of Celine anymore. The pain of what happened runs too deep." Elder Orion stroked his beard, his expression somber. "When their father died, tradition dictated that his position would pass to the stronger of the twins. They were to fight for dominance, as is our way. And my grandmother won. Yes, but the contest was close, closer than anyone had anticipated, and complicated by the fact that both sisters had fallen in love with the same man, your grandfather." Lyra leaned forward, entranced despite her fear. This was family history she had never heard, secrets kept buried for half a century. When Morgana emerged victorious, claiming both the position of Alpha and the man they both loved, Celine was consumed by bitterness. She accused Morgana of using forbidden magic to win the contest. The council found no evidence of this, but Celine would not be placated. She threatened to reveal secrets that would destroy the pack. "What secrets?" Elder Orion shook his head. "That knowledge died with the few who knew the truth. What matters is that Celine was exiled for her accusations, banished to the frozen peaks in the far north. She was stripped of her pack connections, her powers diminished by isolation. For 50 years, she lived there alone, feeding her hatred like a sacred flame. And now she's enacted this curse? Through my grandmother? It appears so. The curse requires tremendous power, usually the life force of the caster. But Celine would have needed a connection to you, a way to bind the curse specifically to your blood. He fixed Lyra with his penetrating gaze. Did your grandmother give you anything before she died? Something personal? Something tied to your bloodline? Lyra thought back to those final moments, to Morgana's brief return to lucidity. She told me to find something called the Mirror of Truth. She said it would show what cannot be seen. Elder Orion's eyes widened, a flash of recognition crossing his features. The Mirror of Truth is an ancient artifact, said to have been crafted by the first wolves. It shows not what is, but what must be, what could be, and what should never come to pass. Do you know where it is? If it still exists, it would be among your grandmother's most treasured possessions. But Lyra, you must understand something crucial about this curse. Elder Orion leaned forward, his expression grave. It cannot be broken by ordinary means. The magic that binds it is too powerful, too ancient. Then I'm doomed to either become a murderer or watch my pack burn? Despair threatened to overwhelm her. There is one possibility. Elder Orion's voice softened. The curse can be severed by a power even more ancient than itself. True love, Lyra. Not ordinary affection, but a mate bond so pure, so powerful that it breaks through the very fabric of dark magic. A mate bond? With who? The very Alpha King I'm cursed to kill? Lyra let out a bitter laugh. That's impossible. In our world, child, few things are truly impossible. Improbable, yes. Unlikely, certainly, but not impossible. Elder Orion rose from his chair, moving to a small wooden chest on a side table. Before you leave, there is something I must give you. From the chest, he withdrew a small pouch of worn leather. This contains mountain ash, silver dust, and wolfsbane mixed according to the old ways. It will not break the curse, but it may help you resist its pull when the critical moment comes. Keep it with you at all times. Lyra accepted the pouch, feeling the subtle vibration of power within it. Thank you, Elder. Do not thank me yet, child. Your path ahead is darker than any I have seen in my long life. But remember this, even in the deepest darkness, a single spark can ignite a flame of hope. As Lyra left Elder Orion's study, the weight of the curse seemed to press down upon her shoulders like a physical burden. She was 15 years old, barely more than a child by werewolf standards. How could she possibly bear the responsibility of either murdering the Alpha King or dooming her entire pack to destruction? That night, Lyra searched through her grandmother's possessions, seeking the mysterious mirror of truth. She found it at the bottom of an ornately carved wooden box, wrapped in layers of velvet cloth that had once been rich purple but had faded to a dusty lavender with age. The mirror itself was small, designed to fit in the palm of a hand. Its frame was silver, worked into intricate patterns of wolves running beneath a full moon. The surface appeared to be ordinary glass, reflecting Lyra's troubled face back at her. "Show me what cannot be seen," she whispered, repeating her grandmother's words. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the surface of the mirror began to swirl, clouding over like breath on cold glass. Shapes formed and dissolved in its depths, too fleeting for Lyra to identify. A castle on a mountainside, a crown glinting in firelight, a man's face, strong and commanding, with eyes that seemed to look directly into her soul. Lyra gasped, nearly dropping the mirror. The man in the reflection was a stranger to her, yet she felt a shock of recognition, as if she had known him all her life. Before she could make sense of this feeling, the image changed again, showing a silver dagger plunging toward a heart, bright blood blossoming like a crimson flower. Then, most disturbing of all, she saw herself, older perhaps by a few years, standing beside the man from the earlier vision. Their hands were clasped together, and a bond of golden light encircled their wrists, pulsing in time with their heartbeats. The mirror surface clouded once more, then cleared, becoming an ordinary reflection again. Lyra stared at it, her heart racing, uncertain whether to be frightened or comforted by what she had seen. Were these visions of what would be, what could be, or what should never come to pass? Alara found Lyra the next morning, sitting by the stream that marked the eastern boundary of their territory. Her friend's approach was nearly silent, but Lyra sensed her presence, catching the familiar scent of pine needles and wild roses that always accompanied Alara. "Your mother is looking for you," Alara said, settling beside Lyra on the mossy bank. Smaller than Lyra, with graceful movements and chestnut hair that caught the morning light, Ilara had been her best friend since childhood. She was the only person besides Lyra's parents who knew about the curse. "I needed to think," Lyra replied, watching the clear water tumble over smooth stones, "about how to kill an Alpha King, or about how to avoid killing one." Alara's directness had always been both her most endearing and most infuriating quality. "Both, neither," Lyra sighed, drawing her knees up to her chest. "I found something last night, something my grandmother wanted me to have." She withdrew the small mirror from her pocket, unwrapping it from its protective cloth. Alara leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. "It's beautiful," she said, reaching out but stopping short of touching it. "What is it?" "The mirror of truth. It showed me visions, but I don't understand what they mean." Alara's eyes widened. "The mirror of truth? That's just a legend. A story told to pups." "It's real." Lyra rewrapped the mirror carefully. "And so is the curse. Elder Orion confirmed it." "What did he say? Is there any way to break it?" "Only true love, apparently. A mate bond with the very person I'm supposed to kill." Lyra shook her head, the absurdity of it all threatening to overwhelm her. As if the Alpha King would even look twice at a 15-year-old nobody from a distant pack. "You're hardly a nobody," Alara objected. "Your grandmother was our Alpha for decades. Your bloodline is one of the oldest and most respected." "That won't matter if I'm executed for attempting to assassinate the king." Ilara was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "There's something you should know. Something I haven't told anyone." She glanced around, ensuring they were truly alone. "I've been having dreams, strange dreams about the coronation ceremony." Lyra turned to her friend, suddenly alert. "What kind of dreams?" "I see you standing in a great clearing. There are thousands of wolves from all the kingdoms. The new Alpha King is being crowned, and when he turns to face the assembly, he looks directly at you. Not at the crowd, but at you specifically, as if he's been searching for you his entire life." A chill ran down Lyra's spine. "What happens next?" "That's where it ends. But Lyra, I've had this same dream every night for a week, and you know my dreams sometimes come true." Alara's prescient dreams were indeed well known within their pack. Minor talents like hers were common among werewolves, though few developed the true sight that Selene had reportedly possessed. "Do you think it means something? That there's a connection between the Alpha King and me beyond this curse?" "I don't know, but I think we need to find out." Alara's expression turned determined. "The coronation is in 2 weeks. We need to be there. My parents would never allow it. They've barely let me out of their sight since grandmother died." "Then we won't tell them." Alara's eyes sparkled with excitement and resolve. "This is about saving your life and the lives of our entire pack. Some rules are worth breaking for that." Against her better judgment, Lyra found herself nodding. The seed of a plan began to form in her mind, dangerous and desperate, but possibly their only chance. She would attend the coronation. She would see this Alpha King for herself. And somehow she would find a way to break the curse before it forced her to commit an act that would destroy everything she loved. As the day of the coronation dawned, the skies above the ancient ceremonial grounds were clear and bright, as if nature itself approved of the transition of power. The great clearing, a massive valley surrounded by ancient pines, could accommodate thousands of werewolves from all 7 kingdoms. To human eyes, it appeared to be merely a remote forest location, perfect for elaborate gatherings and festivals. They had no idea it was the most sacred ground in the werewolf world. Thorn stood at the window of his private chamber, watching as the valley filled with his future subjects. From this height, they appeared as a colorful tapestry, their clothing representing the traditional colors and patterns of their respective packs. The Azure Mountains pack in their blues and silvers. The Desert Winds pack in amber and russet. The Coastal Guardians in green and gray. The Shadow Forest pack in deep purples and blacks. The River Valley pack in blues and greens. The High Plains pack in gold and brown. And his own pack, the Ancient Bloodline, in crimson and midnight blue. It is time, my lord. Malcolm stood in the doorway holding the ceremonial robes that Thorn would wear for the coronation. Made from the finest silk and embroidered with silver thread, they depicted the history of the United Kingdoms in intricate detail. The council is assembled. The 7 alpha representatives await you in the Great Hall. Thorn nodded, turning from the window. And the security arrangements? Doubled as you requested. Every entrance and exit is guarded. Every guest has been vouched for by their pack leaders. Malcolm helped Thorn don the ceremonial robes. We have taken every precaution against the threat. Yet both men knew that precautions might not be enough against a curse that had existed for generations. As Thorn prepared to leave his chambers, Malcolm placed a hand on his arm, an unusual gesture of familiarity from the normally formal advisor. My lord, there is something else you should know. Malcolm's voice was low, meant for Thorn's ears alone. I have discovered more about the nature of the curse. It does not merely compel its bearer to attempt assassination. It binds their very life force to the task. If they fail to complete it, the curse will consume them from within. Thorn absorbed this new information with a grim expression. So whoever carries this burden is as much a victim as I would be. Yes, they have no choice but to attempt the deed or face a painful death. Then we must identify them before they act, not just to save my life, but to save theirs as well. Malcolm nodded, though his expression remained troubled. There is one more thing, my lord. The ancient texts speak of only one way to break such a curse. True love, a mate bond, Thorn finished for him. My father told me, a convenient solution in fairy tales perhaps, but hardly practical in reality. The old magic often works in ways we cannot predict or control, Malcolm said. Keep your senses alert today. The curse bearer will be drawn to you, compelled by forces beyond their control. That compulsion might be our best chance to identify them before they strike. With these ominous words hanging between them, Thorn departed for the Great Hall, where the first phase of the coronation ceremony would begin. Miles away at the edge of the ceremonial grounds, Lyra and Alara slipped through the gathering crowds, their simple silver dresses helping them blend in with the thousands of visitors. They had traveled for 3 days to reach this place, telling Lyra's parents they were visiting relatives in a neighboring village. The air thrummed with excitement and anticipation. Music played from various quarters, the traditional instruments of each pack creating a harmonious, if somewhat chaotic symphony. Food vendors offered delicacies from all 7 kingdoms, and the mingled scents of spices, roasting meats, and sweet pastries filled the air. But beneath the festive atmosphere, Lyra felt the dark pulse of the curse growing stronger with each step she took toward the central clearing where the coronation would take place. The small leather pouch Elder Orion had given her seemed to burn against her skin where she had tucked it into the bodice of her dress. Are you all right? Alara asked, noticing her friend's pallor. It's getting stronger, Lyra whispered. The curse, I can feel it pulling me toward him, whoever he is. Alara squeezed her hand reassuringly. We'll find a way through this. Remember what Elder Orion said about the mate bond and my dream. Perhaps there's a connection. Lyra nodded, though doubt clouded her thoughts. How could there be a mate bond between her and a man she had never met? A man who was likely decades her senior, hardened by politics and power. As they approached the central clearing, they found themselves facing a barrier of guards checking identification tokens. Each legitimate guest had been issued a small wooden disc carved with their pack symbol and personal identifier. Lyra and Alara had no such tokens. Now what? Lyra whispered, eyeing the stern-faced guards. Alara's gaze darted around the perimeter until she spotted a gap in the security near a grove of ancient pines. This way, she murmured, pulling Lyra along the edge of the crowd. They slipped between groups of chattering guests, working their way toward the trees. Just as they reached the edge of the grove, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. A delegation from the Desert Winds Pack had arrived, their entrance marked by a dramatic display of their traditional sand dance. As all eyes turned toward the spectacle, Lyra and Alara darted into the trees, quickly finding the gap in the security perimeter. We made it, Alara breathed as they emerged on the other side, now within the central clearing where rows of benches faced an ancient stone dais. They found seats near the back, partially concealed by a group of tall werewolves from the mountain pack. From this vantage point, They could see the entire ceremonial space while remaining relatively inconspicuous. The clearing filled rapidly as noon approached. A hush fell over the assembly as a group of 7 elders, each representing one of the major packs, took their places on the dais. They wore robes of their pack colors, embroidered with silver symbols of their offices. Then a trumpet fanfare announced the arrival of King Alaric II. The aging monarch walked slowly but with dignity, his crimson and blue robes flowing around him, the silver crown catching the sunlight. Behind him came a procession of royal guards, advisors, and finally Prince Thorn. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The man who strode confidently behind his father was the same one she had seen in the Mirror of Truth. Tall and powerfully built, with dark hair that held just a touch of silver at the temples, he moved with the fluid grace of a natural predator. His features were strong and aristocratic, his bearing regal without being arrogant. But it was his eyes that captivated Lyra. Eyes the color of a storm-tossed sea, intense and somehow sorrowful. As he climbed the steps to the dais, Lyra felt the curse stir within her, a dark, hungry force that recognized its target. Her hand moved involuntarily to her side, where she had concealed a small silver dagger, its blade coated with a poison made from wolfsbane and other toxic herbs. She had prepared it in a trance-like state the night before, the curse guiding her hands despite her conscious resistance. "Lyra," Alara hissed, grabbing her friend's wrist. "Your eyes, they're changing." With a supreme effort of will, Lyra tore her gaze away from Thorn, focusing on her friend's concerned face. "What do you mean?" "They flashed black for a moment, like your grandmother's did when she passed the curse to you." Terror clutched at Lyra's heart. Was she losing control already? The ceremony hadn't even properly begun. She fumbled for the pouch Elder Orion had given her, clutching it tightly in her palm. Its magic seemed to push back against the curse, giving her a moment of clarity. On the dais, King Alaric raised his hands for silence. The assembled werewolves, thousands strong, fell quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of wind through the ancient pines. "My people," Alaric began, his voice carrying clearly across the clearing despite its aged rasp. "For 30 years I have had the honor of serving as your Alpha King. I have seen our kingdoms through peace and conflict, prosperity and hardship. I have watched our children grow and our elders pass into the embrace of the moon." A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. "Today, as the wheel of time turns once more, I pass the sacred duty of leadership to my son, Prince Thorn. He has proven himself in council and combat, in diplomacy and judgment. He carries the blood of 13 generations of Alpha Kings in his veins." Alaric turned to face his son, who knelt before him. "Thorn, son of Alaric, heir to the ancient bloodline, do you swear to uphold the laws of our people, to protect the 7 kingdoms with your life, to judge fairly and rule wisely?" "I swear it," Sir Thorn replied, his deep voice resonating across the clearing. "By moon and blood, by fang and claw, I dedicate my life to our people." Alaric removed the silver crown from his own head, holding it aloft so that it caught the midday sun, sending beams of light dancing across the assembly. "Then by the power vested in me by our ancestors and by the sacred trust of our people, I name you Thorn, first of your name, Alpha King of the United Werewolf Kingdoms, protector of the 7 packs, guardian of the ancient ways." As Alaric lowered the crown toward Thorn's head, Lyra felt the curse surge within her like a tidal wave of darkness. Her vision narrowed, tunneling until all she could see was Thorn kneeling on the dais. Her hand tightened around the dagger, and she found herself rising to her feet, her body no longer under her control. "Lyra, no!" Alara whispered frantically, trying to pull her back down. But Lyra shook off her friend's grasp, moving as if in a trance. The crowd, focused on the coronation, paid little attention to the young woman making her way toward the aisle. The curse propelled her forward, each step bringing her closer to the dais, closer to the act that would destroy her soul. Then, just as the crown touched Thorn's head, he looked up. His gaze swept across the assembly and locked directly with Lyra's. In that instant, time seemed to stop. The curse within her recoiled as if struck, while something else, something warm and golden, unfurled in her chest. Thorn's eyes widened in recognition, though they had never met before this moment. He rose to his feet, the crown now resting upon his head, his gaze never leaving Lyra's. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as two impossibilities occurred simultaneously. First, a second moon appeared in the daytime sky, a pale ghost of the real moon, but clearly visible alongside the sun, a phenomenon never before recorded in their histories. Second, a golden light began to emanate from both Thorn and Lyra, connecting them across the distance that separated them, visible to every werewolf present. The twin moon, someone whispered, the words spreading through the crowd like wildfire. The sign of destined mates. Elder Orion, who had journeyed to witness the coronation, stepped forward from among the council members. The prophecy, he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent clearing. The 13th king has found his heart's delight. Thorn descended from the dais, moving through the parting crowd toward Lyra. The golden light between them grew stronger with each step he took. The curse within Lyra thrashed and fought against this new power, causing her to double over in pain. "Who are you?" Thorn asked as he reached her, his voice gentle despite the intensity of his gaze. "Lyra of the Northern Pine Pack," she managed to reply through gritted teeth, fighting the curse's compulsion to strike. "And I was sent to kill you." Instead of recoiling, Thorn reached out, taking her hands in his. The moment their skin touched, the golden light flared brilliantly, and the shadow of the curse visibly withdrew, coiling tighter within Lyra, but losing its grip on her actions. "I've seen you," Thorn said softly, so only she could hear. "In my dreams every night for the past year. You come to me with a silver dagger, but before it strikes, I always wake." Lyra stared at him in wonder and confusion. "I've seen you too, in the mirror of truth." Understanding dawned in Thorn's eyes. "The mirror of truth has been lost for generations. How did you come to possess it?" "My grandmother gave it to me before she died, before she passed the curse to me." Around them, the crowd murmured in confusion and awe. The twin moon phenomenon continued, casting an otherworldly light over the gathering. Alaric had descended from the dais and now stood beside Malcolm, both watching the interaction between Thorn and Lyra with expressions of cautious hope. "The curse," Thorn said, his gaze intensifying. "Tell me about it." Before Lyra could respond, a burning pain seared through her chest, causing her to cry out. The curse, sensing its purpose threatened, fought back with renewed vigor. The dagger she had concealed slipped from the folds of her dress, clattering to the ground between them. Thorn looked down at the weapon, then back at Lyra's face, contorted in pain. Without hesitation, he pulled her closer, one hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "Listen to me, Lyra of the Northern Pine Pack. I believe we were brought together for a reason greater than this curse. The twin moon appears only when true mates find each other across impossible odds. I believe you are my mate, my heart's true match. And if that is so, then no curse can stand against our bond." The pain in Lyra's chest intensified, black tendrils of the curse's power visibly crawling beneath her skin. "It's killing me," she gasped. "I can't fight it much longer." "You don't have to fight it alone anymore." Thorn's voice was steady, certain. "Accept the mate bond. Let it in. Let it fight for us." Lyra looked up into his eyes, seeing not a stranger, but somehow a soul she had known across lifetimes. The golden light pulsed between them, warm and inviting, offering sanctuary from the curse's cold grip. With the last of her strength, Lyra made her choice. She opened herself to the golden light, welcoming it into her heart. "I accept the bond," she whispered. The moment the words left her lips, the golden light exploded outward, enveloping both of them in a cocoon of pure, radiant energy. Inside the sanctuary, Lyra felt the curse's grip weaken, then break entirely as the golden light burned it away like morning mist before the sun. Above them, the twin moon phenomenon intensified, the ghostly second moon growing brighter until it rivaled the sun itself. Then as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished, leaving the ordinary daytime sky. The golden cocoon around Thorn and Lyra slowly dissipated, revealing them standing forehead to forehead, hands clasped between them. Where the curse's black tendrils had crawled beneath Lyra's skin, golden lines now traced elegant patterns, the visible manifestation of the mate bond that had saved her. "What just happened?" Lyra asked, her voice stronger now, free from pain for the first time since her grandmother's death. "The beginning of everything," Thorn replied, a smile transforming his solemn features. and the fulfillment of a prophecy centuries in the making. Elder Orion approached them, bowing deeply to Thorn before addressing them both. The twin moon is the rarest of signs, seen perhaps once in 1,000 years. It marks the union of two bloodlines destined to bring about great change. What does it mean for the curse? Lyra asked anxiously. The mate bond has neutralized it for now, but be warned, young one, a curse this powerful does not simply disappear. It will seek another vessel, another way to fulfill its purpose. Thorn's expression hardened with resolve. Then we will face it together, as mates, as equals. He turned to address the still stunned assembly. My people, on this day of my coronation, fate has brought me not just a crown, but a queen. I present to you Lyra of the Northern Pine Pack, my true mate, blessed by the twin moon itself. A cheer erupted from the crowd, though Lyra could see confusion and concern on many faces, particularly among the royal advisors and elder council members. This was unprecedented. A 15-year-old girl from a distant pack suddenly elevated to the position of queen. As if reading her thoughts, Thorn leaned close to whisper in her ear, "Fear not. The mate bond does not require immediate marriage. You will have time to grow, to learn, to decide if this is truly the path you wish to walk." Relief flooded through Lyra, followed quickly by a wave of exhaustion as the events of the day caught up with her. The curse might be neutralized, but she could still feel its echo within her, waiting, watching. And somewhere beyond the jubilation of the coronation, she sensed a darker presence, a malevolent force that had set these events in motion and would not easily accept defeat. As Thorn led her toward the dais to stand beside him during the remainder of the ceremony, Lyra caught sight of Alara in the crowd, her friend's expression a mixture of awe and concern. Beyond her, at the very edge of the clearing, a hooded figure stood watching, their features obscured, but their posture radiating fury. The curse had been thwarted today, but Lyra knew with bone-deep certainty that their story was just beginning. The battle between light and darkness, between love and hatred, between destiny and choice, had only just begun. And at its center stood Lyra and Thorn, bound by forces beyond their understanding, facing a future as uncertain as it was filled with possibility. The days following the coronation passed in a whirlwind of ancient ceremonies and new beginnings. Thorn assumed his full powers as Alpha King, while Lyra found herself thrust into a world of royal protocol, political intrigue, and scrutiny from all 7 kingdoms. The unprecedented appearance of the twin moon had elevated a simple girl from the Northern Pine Pack to potential queen virtually overnight, leaving the royal court in a state of barely concealed chaos. In the vast circular chamber known as the King's Council Room, Victor, commander of the Royal Guard, stood at rigid attention, his spine straight as a sword blade, his expression betraying nothing of his inner thoughts. At 53, Victor had served the royal family for over 3 decades. His face, weathered by years of patrol along the kingdom borders, bore the scars of countless battles. The most prominent scar bisected his left eyebrow and ran down to his jaw, a souvenir from the Southern Territory Rebellion 15 years ago. The security protocols must be doubled, Victor announced to the assembled advisors. With all due respect to the unexpected events of the coronation, we cannot ignore the fact that someone carrying an enchanted dagger infiltrated our most sacred ceremony. Malcolm, seated at Thorn's right hand, raised a silver eyebrow. That someone is now recognized as our king's true mate by ancient law. Surely that changes our assessment of the situation. Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. It changes nothing about the breach in security. Moreover, we know the girl was compelled by a powerful curse. Who can say what other influences might be at work? Thorn, who had been listening silently from his position at the head of the great oak table, finally spoke. His voice, though quiet, commanded immediate attention from every person in the room. The curse targeting me is real, as is the mate bond that neutralized it. Both facts are now beyond dispute. His stormy eyes swept the chamber, challenging anyone to contradict him. But Commander Victor raises a valid concern. The curse came from somewhere or someone. The attack failed, but the threat remains. Victor inclined his head in acknowledgement, though something flickered in his eyes too quickly to identify. My king, I only seek to ensure your safety and the stability of your reign, Victor said. This mate bond with a girl from a distant pack, while clearly ordained by ancient forces, creates vulnerabilities we cannot ignore. She knows nothing of court politics, royal security, or the complex alliances that hold our kingdoms together, which is precisely why she will require protection and education, Malcolm interjected smoothly. I propose assigning her personal guards from multiple packs to ensure no single faction can exert undue influence. Thorne nodded in agreement. Make the arrangements, Malcolm, and schedule daily tutoring in our history, laws, and protocols. He turned his attention back to Victor. Commander, I want a full security assessment. Focus particularly on any unusual movements or communications from the exiled territories. This curse originated somewhere, and I intend to find its source. Of course, my king. Victor bowed, his expression perfectly composed. Will that be all? For now. Thorne dismissed the council with a gesture, remaining seated as they filed out. Only Malcolm lingered behind, waiting until the heavy doors closed before speaking. You sense it too, Malcolm said. Not a question, but a statement. Thorne's expression darkened. Something about Victor feels off. He objected too strongly to Lyra. He's always been a traditionalist. The appearance of a 15-year-old mate for the king would naturally concern him. Perhaps. Thorne rose, moving to the enormous window that overlooked the ancient forest surrounding the fortress. Or perhaps there's more. Have him watched, but discreetly. I want to know where he goes, whom he speaks with. Malcolm nodded, his weathered face solemn. And what of the girl? Lyra? She's not just the girl anymore, Malcolm. She's my mate. A complexity of emotions crossed Thorne's face. Wonder, confusion, concern. Though I scarcely know her beyond what the bond tells me. The mate bond is ancient magic, older than our written history. It does not make mistakes. No, but neither does it provide instruction manuals. A rare smile flickered across Thorne's face. I'm 40, Malcolm. She's 15. The age gap alone makes this complicated. Which is why the bond does not demand immediate consummation. She will have years to grow, to learn, to become the queen she is destined to be. Your responsibility now is to protect her while she becomes that person. Thorne turned back to the window, his expression grave. Something is coming, Malcolm. Something darker than a mere assassination attempt. I can feel it in my bones. The curse was just the beginning. Far below in the royal gardens, unaware of the conversation about her fate, Lyra walked among blooming moonflowers and night-blooming jasmine. The royal gardeners had created a sanctuary that thrived under moonlight, a tribute to the werewolf connection to lunar cycles. During daylight hours, the garden took on a silver-blue hue, otherworldly and serene. Elara walked beside her, both girls having been given quarters in the royal fortress following the coronation. Their presence had caused considerable gossip among the court, but Thorne's declaration of the mate bond had silenced the worst of the objections. I still can't believe any of this is real, Lyra said, trailing her fingers along the velvety petals of a midnight rose. 3 weeks ago, I was just a normal girl in our village. Now I'm supposedly destined to be the Alpha Queen. Nothing about you has ever been just normal, Elara replied with a small smile. Your grandmother was Pack Alpha for decades. You've always had the strongest healing gift in 3 generations. And now the twin moon itself appeared for you and King Thorne. But I don't know him, Elara. The mate bond created this connection between us, this sense of recognition. But he's still a stranger, a powerful stranger, 25 years older than me. Elara stopped walking, turning to face her friend directly. Does the bond feel wrong? Does it feel forced or unnatural? Lyra considered the question seriously. The golden warmth that had replaced the curse's cold grip still pulsed gently within her, a constant reminder of her connection to Thorne. Unlike the curse, which had felt invasive and controlling, the mate bond felt like a supportive presence, encouraging rather than compelling. No, she admitted, it feels right, like finding a piece of oneself I didn't know was missing. But that doesn't make any of this less terrifying. Then trust that feeling, Elara advised. Trust the bond. Everything else, getting to know each other, learning your place here, understanding your role, all of that will come with time. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of a royal attendant, a young woman in the crimson and blue livery of the ancient bloodline pack. Lady Lyra, the attendant said with a formal bow, His Majesty requests your presence in the Royal Library in 1 hour's time. Senior Advisor Malcolm will escort you. Lyra exchanged a surprised glance with Alara before nodding her acceptance. Thank you. Please tell His Majesty I will be there. After the attendant departed, Alara squeezed her friend's hand. The Royal Library. It's said to contain books and scrolls dating back to the first wolves. What an honor to be invited there. Or what a convenient place to dispose of an inconvenient mate, Lyra muttered, only half joking. Despite the bond's warm presence, anxiety churned in her stomach. She had attempted to kill the king, curse or no curse. Some at court might consider that unforgivable. 1 hour later, dressed in a simple but elegant blue gown provided by the royal seamstresses, Lyra followed Malcolm through the labyrinthine corridors of the fortress. The elderly advisor moved with surprising grace for his age, his silver hair gleaming in the torchlight. The king wishes to share something with you that few outside the royal bloodline have ever seen, Malcolm explained as they walked. The knowledge contained within certain sections of the royal library is considered sacred, passed down only to those who bear the responsibility of leadership. Then why show me? I'm nobody. Malcolm stopped, fixing her with a penetrating gaze. You are nobody, child. Now you are the twin moon blessed, recognized by ancient magic as the true mate of the Alpha King. That makes you very much somebody indeed. They resumed walking in silence until reaching a massive set of ironwood doors carved with intricate scenes from werewolf history. 2 guards stood at attention on either side, their expressions impassive. At Malcolm's approach, they straightened further, then each placed a hand on one of the doors, pushing them open to reveal the legendary Royal Library. Lyra gasped involuntarily as she stepped inside. The library occupied a vast circular chamber with a domed ceiling, painted to resemble the night sky. Bookshelves 20 feet tall lined the walls, accessible by rolling ladders and spiral staircases. The center of the room featured clusters of reading tables, comfortable chairs, and glass display cases containing particularly ancient or fragile texts. Thorne stood beside one such display case, his tall figure imposing yet somehow at home among the accumulated knowledge of centuries. He wore simpler attire than at the coronation, a dark blue tunic and black trousers that emphasized his powerful build. The silver crown was absent, but his natural authority remained unmistakable. As Lyra approached, the now familiar warmth of the mate bond intensified, golden light visibly shimmering between them for a moment before subsiding to its usual gentle glow. Thorne's serious expression softened slightly at the sight of her. Thank you for coming, he said, his deep voice resonating in the library's perfect acoustics. I believe we have much to discuss. Malcolm discreetly withdrew, taking a position near the doors where he could ensure their privacy while remaining available if needed. The library is beautiful, Lyra said, uncertain how to address the king who was, by ancient law, her destined mate. It contains the collective wisdom and history of our people, Thorne replied, gesturing to the countless volumes surrounding them. Some texts dated back to the first change, when humans first discovered their ability to shift forms. He guided her toward the display case he had been examining when she entered. But I didn't bring you here for a history lesson, at least not a general one. I brought you here to show you this. The case contained a massive tome bound in what appeared to be silver and midnight blue leather. Its cover bore no title, only an intricate symbol showing 2 wolves, one black and one white, circling each other beneath a full moon. The Book of Duality, Thorne explained. Written in the language of the first wolves, it contains our oldest prophecies, spells, and records of ancient magic. Only the Alpha King and his most trusted advisors are permitted to study its contents. And now me, Lyra observed, raising an eyebrow in question. Now you, Thorne confirmed, because what I found within these pages directly concerns both of us. He opened the case with a small silver key and carefully lifted the ancient tome, carrying it to a nearby reading table. The book emanated power, a subtle vibration that Lyra could feel even before Thorne opened it. After the coronation, I came here seeking information about the twin moon phenomenon and the curse that had targeted me. What I found was unexpected. He opened the book to a page marked with a thin ribbon of blue silk. The text was written in symbols that shifted and changed as Lyra tried to focus on them, similar to what she had experienced with Elder Orion's book. Beside the text were detailed illustrations showing a complex ritual, a curse being cast, and two figures bound by chains of darkness. "Can you read it?" Lyra asked, fascinated despite her apprehension. "Parts of it. The language is archaic, but certain passages become clear to those deemed worthy by the book itself." Thorn traced a finger along a line of shifting symbols. "This section describes the binding curse of blood and bone, the same curse that compelled you to attempt my assassination. But it reveals something Elder Orion may not have known or shared." Thorn turned to face Lyra directly, his expression grave. The curse wasn't designed merely to kill the Alpha King. It was created as part of a complex magical working intended to transfer the king's power to the curse caster. My death would have been just the first step. The curse would then have consumed you as well, using your life force as a conduit to channel my powers back to whoever cast the spell. Lyra felt the blood drain from her face. "So I was never meant to survive the assassination?" "No, you were intended as a sacrifice, a tool to be discarded once your purpose was fulfilled." The cruelty of it stole her breath. Not only had she been cursed to commit murder, but she had been sentenced to death in the process, all to serve someone else's thirst for power. "My grandmother, did she know this when she passed the curse to Morpheus?" "I doubt it," Thorn replied gently. "From what you've told me, she was possessed by her sister's spirit in those final moments. She had no control over what was happening." "Celine," Lyra whispered, the name tasting bitter on her tongue. "She did this. She sentenced her own flesh and blood to death." Which brings me to the second discovery. Thorn turned another page in the ancient book, revealing an illustration of twin female infants beside a crescent moon. The book speaks of sundered souls, a forbidden ritual from the earliest days of our kind. It allowed a powerful witch to split her soul into two separate bodies, dividing her powers and essential nature between them. "What does that have to do with Celine and my grandmother?" Thorn's expression grew even more solemn. "According to this text, such a ritual would create two beings who appear to be sisters, but are actually two halves of the same original person. One half would embody nurturing, healing, and compassion. The other would contain ambition, power, and the darker emotions." The implication struck Lyra like a physical blow. "Are you saying my grandmother and Celine were the same person? That they were created through this ritual?" "I believe it's possible. It would explain the unusual intensity of their conflict, their connection to each other, and the extraordinary magical abilities both possessed." Thorn closed the book carefully. If true, it means Celine didn't just want revenge against her sister. She wanted to be whole again, to reclaim the parts of herself that had been separated. "By killing me and you and taking your power." Lyra shook her head, trying to process this revelation. "But why wait 50 years? Why not attempt this sooner?" The book mentions that the ritual requires specific celestial alignments. The next occurs during the full moon following the coronation of the 13th Alpha King. Lyra finished, remembering the words of the curse. "When the new Alpha King is crowned, when the words of power are spoken, when the moon reaches her fullness." Thorn nodded grimly. "Exactly. Celine has been waiting decades for this specific alignment of circumstances. Your grandmother's death, my coronation, and the upcoming full moon." But the curse failed. The mate bond neutralized it. It neutralized that particular expression of the curse. But I fear Celine herself remains a threat. Thorn hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. With deliberate movements, he unfastened the top buttons of his tunic and pulled the fabric aside to reveal his chest. A silver scar in the shape of a crescent moon marked the skin directly over his heart, exactly where a dagger thrust would penetrate most fatally. "I was born with this mark," Thorn explained quietly. "According to the Royal Archives, it identifies me as the chosen, destined to face a great magical threat during my reign. For years, I dismissed it as superstition. Now I'm not so certain." Lyra stared at the mark, transfixed. Without thinking, she reached out, her fingertips hovering just above the silvery skin. Thorn remained perfectly still, allowing her this liberty that few would dare take with the Alpha King. "May I?" she asked, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the gesture. At his nod, she gently touched the scar. The moment her fingers made contact, a spark of golden light flashed between them, and both gasped as a series of images flooded their minds. A castle on a frozen mountain peak, a ritual circle carved into ancient stone, a woman with eyes like midnight performing a complex spell, and a silver dagger identical to the one Lyra had carried at the coronation. Lyra jerked her hand back, her eyes wide with shock. "What was that?" "The mate bond," Thorn replied, equally stunned. "It's growing stronger, allowing us to share visions. That place, the castle on the mountain, I've seen it before in the Mirror of Truth." Thorn refastened his tunic, his expression thoughtful. "That must be where Celine has been living in exile. The frozen peaks in the far north." "She's preparing the ritual," Lyra said with certainty. "Those carvings in the stone, the silver dagger. She's getting ready for the full moon, even though the curse failed." "Then we need to discover her new plan before the moon reaches its peak 3 days from now." Thorn's voice took on the commanding tone of the Alpha King. "We'll need the Mirror of Truth. Do you still have it?" "Yes, it's in my quarters. But last time I used it, the visions were confusing, fragmented." "The book mentions the mirror. Apparently, its clarity increases when used by two people with a strong magical connection." A hint of a smile touched Thorn's lips. "I'd say the twin moon-blessed qualify." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the library doors opening. Malcolm entered, his usual composed demeanor replaced by urgency. "My king, forgive the interruption, but there's been an incident at the Northern Guardhouse. Commander Victor requests your presence immediately." Thorn straightened, instantly alert. "What kind of incident?" "Intruders, Your Majesty. They were captured attempting to scale the outer wall. They claim to be from the Northern Pine Pack." Lyra stepped forward. "My pack? Who are they?" Malcolm shook his head. "They refuse to speak to anyone but the king. Commander Victor is interrogating them now." Thorn exchanged a glance with Lyra. "We'll both go. If they're from your pack, your presence may encourage them to be forthcoming." As they followed Malcolm through the fortress quarters toward the Northern Guardhouse, Lyra's mind raced. Who from her pack would risk climbing the fortress walls rather than approaching through proper channels? And why now, just days after she had arrived with the curse? The Northern Guardhouse was a stone structure built into the fortress wall, providing both a watchtower and a secure location for dealing with the potential threats. As they approached, Lyra noticed an unusual number of guards posted outside, all wearing the crimson and blue of the ancient bloodline pack rather than the mixed pack representation typical of the Royal Guard. Inside, the guardhouse consisted of a main chamber with several smaller cells branching off it. Commander Victor stood in the center of the room, his posture rigid, his scarred face impassive as he turned to acknowledge their arrival. "Your Majesty," he said with a formal bow, "I apologize for disturbing you, but these intruders claim connection to your mate." The slight pause before the word mate was barely perceptible but unmistakable. "Where are they?" Thorn asked, his tone neutral but authoritative. Victor gestured to a cell door. "In there, sire. Two males from the Northern Pine Pack. According to their account, they were armed." Thorn nodded to the guards who unlocked the cell door. As it swung open, Lyra gasped in recognition. "Father! Rowan!" Her father, Gareth, and her older cousin Rowan sat on a stone bench within the cell. Both showed signs of rough handling. Gareth sported a split lip, while Rowan had the beginnings of a black eye. They rose quickly at the sight of Lyra and the king. "Lyra," Gareth breathed, relief evident in his voice. "Thank the moon you're alive." "What are you doing here?" Lyra asked, stepping forward despite Victor's subtle move to block her. "Why would you try to climb the wall instead of coming through the gates?" "We tried the gates first," Rowan said, his expression darkening. "We were turned away, told that no delegations from the Northern Pine Pack were expected or welcome." Thorn's brow furrowed. "By whose authority?" "That the guards said they were following orders from Commander Victor," Gareth replied, his gaze shifting to the commander. "When we explained that Lyra was my daughter and that we had urgent news about a threat to both her and the king, they became hostile. We had no choice but to find another way in." Victor's expression remained impassive. "Your Majesty, these men carried concealed weapons. They refused to surrender them when questioned at the gate. Protocol dictates every werewolf carries weapons, Commander, Thorne interrupted, particularly when traveling long distances through potentially hostile territory. That alone is not cause to refuse entry to the father of my mate. The rebuke, though mild, caused Victor's jaw to tighten almost imperceptibly. Of course, Your Majesty. I was simply following security protocols in light of recent events. Release them, Thorne commanded, and have rooms prepared for them in the eastern wing, near Lady Lyra's quarters. As the guards moved to comply, Thorne addressed Gareth directly. You mentioned urgent news about a threat. What have you discovered? Gareth exchanged a glance with Rowan before answering. It would be better discussed in private, Your Majesty. The walls here may have ears. Thorne nodded in understanding. We'll speak in my private council chamber. Malcolm, escort our guests. Commander Victor, resume your regular duties. I'll expect a full report on this misunderstanding by morning. Victor bowed stiffly. As you command, sire. As they left the guardhouse, Lyra fell into step beside her father, noting the tension in his movements and the wary way he scanned their surroundings. Gareth had always been alert, a trait he attributed to his years as a hunter, but this hypervigilance was new and concerning. Father, what's really happening? She whispered. Why did you come? Not here, he murmured back. Too many eyes, too many ears. But know this, Selene is coming, and she's not what any of us thought. The private council chamber was a smaller, more intimate space than the main council room. Located in the heart of the royal quarters, it offered absolute privacy for sensitive discussions. A circular table of polished mahogany dominated the center, surrounded by 8 chairs. Maps of the 7 kingdoms decorated the walls, along with portraits of previous Alpha Kings. Once the doors were securely closed and Malcolm had confirmed no guards remained within earshot, Thorne gestured for everyone to sit. Now explain this threat. Gareth leaned forward, his expression grave. 3 days ago, our village was visited by a stranger, a woman who arrived during the darkest hour of night. She came directly to our home, somehow bypassing all the sentries and protective wards. She said she was looking for Lyra. What did she look like? Thornton asked sharply. Young, perhaps 30 in appearance, beautiful in a cold way, with hair black as midnight and eyes to match. She moved like a predator, graceful but deadly. Selene, Lyra whispered. But that's impossible. She should be ancient, over 70 years old. That's what I thought, Gareth agreed. But this is where the story becomes complicated. He took a deep breath as if preparing to lift a heavy burden. I recognized her, you see, not from recent memory, but from long ago. Before you were born, Lyra, before I met your mother, I served in the royal guard here at the fortress. The revelation stunned Lyra into silence. Her father had always claimed to be a simple hunter from the northern pine pack, his past life unremarkable and ordinary. It was 30 years ago, Gareth continued. I was young, ambitious, assigned to the elite guard that protected King Alaric. One night, I encountered a woman in the restricted sections of this very fortress, examining ancient texts she shouldn't have had access to. That woman was Selene, though she called herself something else then. Thorne's expression grew increasingly troubled. You're saying Selene infiltrated the royal fortress 30 years ago, during my father's early reign? Yes, Your Majesty, I caught her, but instead of raising the alarm, I listened to her. She spoke of ancient magic, of restoring balance to our kind, of reuniting what had been wrongfully sundered. Gareth's eyes grew distant with memory. She was persuasive, compelling. I helped her access more restricted text, believing her intentions were noble. Father, Lyra breathed, disbelief and disappointment mingling in her voice. I was young and foolish, Gareth admitted. I didn't realize what she truly sought until it was almost too late. She was researching the ritual of unification, a forbidden spell mentioned only in the oldest texts. When I discovered her true purpose, I confronted her. The fight that followed nearly killed me. He pulled down the collar of his shirt to reveal an old scar that curved from his collarbone to his shoulder, a wound that should have been fatal to any werewolf. She left me for dead and fled the fortress. By the time I recovered enough to warn anyone, she had vanished completely. I was discharged from the guard for my failure and sent back to my home pack in disgrace. I thought, hoped, that was the end of it. Until she appeared at your door 3 nights ago, Malcolm surmised. Yes, she recognized me immediately, said she'd been watching our family for years. She knew about Lyra, about the curse, about the coronation. Gareth's face paled at the memory. She laughed when I asked why she still looked so young, said that time flows differently for those who understand the deeper magics. What did she want? Thorne asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. She wanted to know where Lyra had gone after the coronation. When we wouldn't tell her, Gareth's voice faltered. She killed 3 village elders, Rowan finished for him, speaking for the first time since entering the chamber. Made us watch, said it was just a taste of what would happen to the entire pack if we didn't cooperate. Horror washed over Lyra. Elder Orion, is he? He lives, Gareth assured her quickly. He was away from the village when Celine came. But the others, Elder Thalia, Elder Brannon, Elder Kira, they're gone. Their deaths were, not easy. We told her Lyra had been taken to the fortress after the coronation. Rowan continued. We had no choice. But once she left, we came immediately to warn you. Celine is coming here, and she's bringing death with her. Thorne rose, pacing the chamber with contained energy. This confirms our suspicions. Celine seeks to complete the ritual of unification during the upcoming full moon. The curse that targeted me was part of her plan, but our mate bond disrupted it. What exactly is this ritual? Lyra asked. Malcolm, who had remained silent until now, answered. If what we've pieced together is correct, it's the reverse of the sundering ritual that split one soul into 2 bodies. The unification would recombine those separate halves into a single, immensely powerful being. Using Lyra as the vessel, Thorne added grimly. The curse would have killed me, channeled my power through Lyra, then killed her as well, leaving only Celine with the combined powers of all 3 of us. But the curse failed, Rowan pointed out. Shouldn't that mean her plan is ruined? No, Gareth said, shaking his head. Celine always has contingencies. If she's coming here despite the curse's failure, she has another approach in mind. We need to prepare for her arrival, Thorne declared. Strengthen the fortress defenses. Alert the guard. No, Gareth interrupted sharply, then tempered his tone. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but conventional defenses won't stop Celine, and alerting the guard may be precisely what she wants. Explain, Thorne commanded, his expression hard. 30 years ago, Celine had allies within the fortress, sympathizers who believed in her cause or were enthralled by her magic. If she's been planning this for decades, she will have placed agents in key positions. Malcolm's eyes narrowed in thought. Like the royal guard, perhaps? Exactly, Gareth confirmed. When we arrived and were turned away despite mentioning a threat to both Lyra and the king, I knew something was wrong. Commander Victor's behavior confirmed my suspicions. Victor, Thorne muttered, the pieces falling into place. Of course, he's been subtly undermining Lyra's position since the coronation, and he was suspiciously well prepared for today's intruders. If Victor is working with Celine, the entire royal guard could be compromised, Malcolm warned. We can trust no one outside this room. Lyra, overwhelmed by these revelations, felt the weight of responsibility settling onto her shoulders. People had died because of her connection to this ancient conflict. More would die if they failed to stop Celine. The mirror of truth, she said suddenly. We need to use it now. If it truly works better with our combined energies, we might see Celine's next move. Thorne nodded in agreement. Rowan, go with Malcolm to retrieve the mirror from Lyra's quarters. Gareth, tell us everything else you know about Celine. Her powers, her weaknesses, anything that might help us counter her. As Rowan and Malcolm departed, Gareth's expression grew even more troubled. There's something else you should know, something I've kept hidden all these years. It concerns Lyra's mother, Freya. Lyra tensed. Her mother had always been somewhat distant, skilled at hunting but awkward with expressions of affection. They had a cordial relationship but lacked the closeness Lyra had shared with her grandmother. What about her? Lyra asked, suddenly afraid of the answer. Freya is not from the northern pine pack originally, Gareth said slowly. I met her shortly after my disgrace when I returned home. She was a refugee from a small, obscure pack in the far eastern territories. At least, that's what she claimed. You're saying she lied? Thorne pressed him. I'm saying I was never certain. Gareth looked directly at his daughter, sorrow etched in the lines of his face. Your mother disappeared 3 days ago, Lyra. The same night Celine came. She left without a word, taking nothing with her. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Had Freya been Celine's agent all along? Had Lyra's own mother been part of the plot to use her as a sacrifice? Before they could explore this disturbing possibility further, the chamber door burst open. Malcolm staggered in, blood streaming from a wound on his temple. He collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Ambush, he managed to choke out. Victor! The guard! They've taken Rowan. Thorn was at Malcolm's side instantly, supporting the elderly advisor. What happened? Victor and a squad of guards intercepted us near Lyra's quarters. They were waiting, as if they knew exactly where we were going and why. Malcolm winced as Thorn examined his head wound. They took Rowan, said they had special plans for any northern Pine Pack wolves who dared infiltrate the fortress. And the mirror? Lyra asked, dreading the answer. They have it. Victor knew exactly what we were after. Malcolm's eyes reflected both pain and anger. He said to tell you that her ladyship sends her regards and looks forward to the reunion at moonrise. Celine is already here, Thorn concluded grimly, and she's been several steps ahead of us all along. What do we do now? Lyra asked, fighting to keep her voice steady despite the fear threatening to overwhelm her. Thorn straightened to his full height, his expression hardening into that of the Alpha King, the ruler of 7 kingdoms and protector of their ancient ways. We stop reacting and start acting. If Victor is working for Celine, then we know where to find our enemies. The Northern Guardhouse, Gareth surmised, where we were held earlier. Exactly, but we can't simply confront them directly. We're outnumbered, and we don't know the full extent of Victor's influence among the guard. Thorn turned to Lyra, his gaze intense. This is where the mate bond becomes our greatest advantage. How? Lyra asked, uncertain. The bond allows us to share thoughts, visions. With practice and focus, it might allow us to communicate silently, to coordinate without giving ourselves away. Thorn extended his hand toward her. Will you try? Lyra hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. The now familiar golden warmth flowed between them, stronger than before. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection, imagining it as a bridge between their minds. Can you hear me? Thorn's voice resonated directly in her thoughts, startling her eyes open. Yes, she gasped aloud. I heard you. In my mind. A rare smile crossed Thorn's face. Good. Now you try, think your words directly at me, following the path of the bond. Lyra concentrated, visualizing her thoughts traveling along the golden connection. Like this? Thorn's smile broadened. Perfect. With practice, this will become easier, more natural. Malcolm watched them with undisguised amazement. The twin moon blessing is even more powerful than the legend suggested. This mental connection could give us the advantage we need. Then let's use it, Gareth said. We need to rescue Rowan and recover the mirror before Celine can implement whatever plan she's devised. Thorn nodded in agreement. Malcolm, you're injured. Remain here and secure this chamber. It may be our only safe haven within the fortress. He turned to Gareth. You know the fortress layout from your time in the Royal Guard. Has it changed much in 30 years? The main structures remain the same. The Northern Guardhouse still connects to the underground detention cells via the old tunnel system, I assume? Yes, rarely used now, but still functional. Those tunnels could be our way in without alerting Victor's men. A plan quickly took shape. They would use the ancient tunnel system to infiltrate the Northern Guardhouse from below, hopefully taking Victor by surprise and rescuing Rowan. If they recovered the Mirror of Truth in the process, they might still have a chance to discover Celine's ultimate plan before the full moon rose the following night. As they prepared to leave the safety of the council chamber, Lyra felt a strange sensation, a cold prickling at the back of her neck, as if someone were watching her from a great distance. She turned, scanning the empty room, but saw nothing unusual. What's wrong? Thorn's voice spoke directly into her mind, their new connection already strengthening. I don't know, just a feeling, like we're being watched. Thorn's expression darkened. The mate bond makes you more sensitive to magical energies. Trust those instincts. As if in response to his words, A shadow near the chamber's far wall seemed to deepen, swirling like smoke before coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape. The temperature in the room plummeted, frost forming on the windows despite the summer evening outside. "She's here," Gareth whispered, his hand moving to the sword at his hip. The shadow continued to condense until it formed the translucent image of a woman, young and beautiful, with midnight black hair and eyes like obsidian pools. Though insubstantial, her presence filled the chamber with cold dread. "My dear Lyra," the apparition spoke, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "How you've grown. And look at the company you keep now. An alpha king, no less. Grandmother would be so proud." "Celine," Lyra breathed, the name tasting of fear and rage on her tongue. The apparition smiled, the expression devoid of warmth. "In the flesh. Well, not quite yet. This is merely a projection, a small taste of what awaits you tomorrow night." "Whatever you're planning, and it won't succeed," Thorn declared, stepping protectively closer to Lyra. "The curse failed. The mate bond has protected us." Celine's laugh was like ice cracking on a frozen lake. "Oh, my dear king. The curse was merely one path to my goal. There are others, darker and more certain." Her gaze shifted to Gareth. "Isn't that right, old friend? You always did underestimate me." Gareth's hand tightened on his sword hilt. "I won't let you harm my daughter." "Your daughter?" Celine's smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp for human form. "Are you so certain of that?" The question hung in the air like poison, seeding doubt where there had been none before. "What do you want?" Lyra demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. "What I've always wanted. Wholeness. Completion." Celine's form drifted closer, causing frost to spread across the floor beneath her. 50 years ago, a terrible injustice was committed. A soul was torn asunder, divided between two bodies, neither fully complete without the other. I am merely seeking to correct that cosmic wrong. By killing innocents, by using dark magic, by forcing others to sacrifice for your gain, Thorn challenged. "That's not justice, that's selfishness dressed as righteousness." Celine's expression hardened. "You know nothing of my suffering. Decades of exile, watching the weaker half of my soul live the life that should have been mine. Loving the man who should have been mine. Raising the child who should have been mine." Her gaze fixed on Lyra with terrible intensity. "But soon, very soon, all will be set right. The moon rises full tomorrow night. The celestial alignment occurs once in 50 years, and I have waited so patiently for this moment." "We'll stop you," Lyra declared, drawing strength from Thorn's presence beside her and the golden warmth of their bond. "You're welcome to try." Celine's form began to dissipate, swirling like dark smoke. "But first, perhaps you should ask your beloved father the truth about your birth. Ask him who your mother really is. Ask him why you look so much like me." With those final chilling words, the apparition vanished, leaving only rapidly melting frost on the floor and windows to prove she had been there at all. In the sudden silence, Lyra turned to her father, seeing the grief and guilt etched deeply in his face. "Father," she whispered. What did she mean? Gareth seemed to age years in those few moments, the burden of long-kept secrets visibly weighing him down. "I never wanted you to find out like this." "Find out what?" Lyra pressed, her heart pounding with dread. Gareth closed his eyes briefly, gathering courage before meeting his daughter's gaze directly. "Freya is not your birth mother, Lyra. She agreed to raise you as her own, to protect you from the truth." "Then who?" Lyra began, though she already suspected the devastating answer. "Your birth mother is Celine," Gareth confessed, his voice breaking. "And she's coming to claim what she believes is rightfully hers, her daughter, and through you, the power of the Alpha King himself." The silence that followed Gareth's confession hung in the air like a physical weight. Lyra stared at her father, no, the man she had believed to be her father, struggling to comprehend the truth that had just shattered her understanding of herself. "Celine is my mother?" Her voice sounded distant to her own ears, as if someone else were speaking. "How is that possible?" Gareth's shoulders slumped, the burden of decades of secrecy finally lifting, but leaving him diminished in its absence. "It happened during my time in the Royal Guard. After I confronted Celine about her true purposes, after she left me for dead, I believed that was the end of it. But she returned months later, in the dead of winter. His eyes grew distant with the memory. She was different, vulnerable, almost human. She said the magical research she'd been conducting had consequences she hadn't anticipated. She was pregnant, and the child you carried powerful magic that was causing her physical pain. The pregnancy was killing her. Thorn watched Lyra carefully, feeling her shock and confusion echoing through their bond. Why would she come to you for help after trying to kill you? Because I was the only one who knew what she had been researching, the only one who understood what she was attempting. And perhaps because, despite everything, there had been a genuine connection between us. Gareth looked directly at Lyra, his expression pleading for understanding. I helped her through the final months. When you were born, Celine was too weak to care for you. She asked me to take you somewhere safe, to protect you until she recovered her strength. So you brought me to the Northern Pine Pack, Lyra said, pieces falling into place. To Morgana. Yes. Morgana recognized immediately that you were Celine's child. The resemblance was unmistakable. But instead of rejecting you, she embraced you completely. She saw you as a chance to heal the rift between her and her sister, a living connection to the family member she had lost. And Freya? Freya had always wanted a child but could not conceive. She agreed to raise you as her own, to give you a mother's love, while Morgana taught you the old ways, the magic that flowed in your bloodline. Malcolm, who had been listening silently, spoke up. But Celine never came back for her daughter. Gareth's expression darkened. She did come back when Lyra was barely a year old. But what she wanted wasn't what any of us expected. She didn't come to reclaim her child out of maternal love. She came because she had discovered an ancient prophecy about a child born of sundered souls, a vessel powerful enough to contain reunited halves. She wanted to use me even then, Lyra whispered, the horror of it settling into her bones. Her own infant daughter. Morgana refused to give you up. The confrontation between them was terrible. Morgana invoked ancient pack law, claiming you as kin and under her protection. Celine was still weakened from the birth and her magical experiments. She couldn't prevail against Morgana's authority as Pack Alpha, not then. She retreated, but she swore she would return when the stars aligned, when the 13th Alpha King was crowned. And she arranged for Morgana to pass the curse to Lyra, Thorn concluded, creating a magical compulsion that would force Lyra to participate in her scheme, willingly or not. Yes, Gareth confirmed, though I doubt even Morgana understood the full scope of what was happening when Celine possessed her in those final moments. The curse was just one strand in a complex web Celine has been weaving for decades. Lyra stood abruptly, pacing the chamber as she processed these revelations. The golden warmth of the mate bond pulsed steadily within her, a reassuring constant amid the chaos of her unraveling identity. So everything I believed about myself was a lie, she said bitterly. I'm not Morgana's granddaughter. I'm not even a true member of the Northern Pine Pack. I'm the daughter of a power-hungry exile who sees me as nothing more than a magical container for her ambitions. No, Gareth said firmly, rising to face her. You are who you've always been. The family that raised you, that loved you, that shaped your character, that was real. Morgana's love for you was real. My love for you is real. Blood is only one kind of connection, Lyra, and often not the most important kind. Thorn moved to Lyra's side, his presence solid and grounding. He's right. We're defined not by our origins, but by our choices. And so far, your choices have shown remarkable courage, compassion, and integrity. Those qualities belong to you alone, regardless of who gave birth to you. Lyra looked up at Thorn, drawing strength from the certainty in his eyes and the steady pulse of their bond. Celine is coming tomorrow night. She wants to use me to complete her ritual, to become whole at the expense of everyone else. How do we stop her? First, Thorn said, we rescue your friend Rowan and recover the mirror of truth. Then we use the bond between us to discover Celine's weaknesses. The Book of Duality mentioned that sundered souls have inherent vulnerabilities. If we can identify them, we may find a way to defeat her without bloodshed. And if we can't? Lyra asked, her voice small but resolute. Thorn's expression hardened. Then we defend our people by any means necessary. Celine has had 50 years to pursue peaceful solutions. Instead, she chose violence, manipulation, and dark magic. As Alpha King, I cannot allow her to threaten the kingdoms I'm sworn to protect. Malcolm, who had been examining the frost patterns left by Celine's apparition, spoke up. The projection spell she used requires tremendous power. She's likely conserving her energy for tomorrow night's ritual. That gives us a small window of opportunity to act while she's recovering. The tunnels, Gareth suggested. If Victor doesn't know I'm familiar with the old passage system, we might still have the advantage of surprise. Thorn nodded in agreement. Malcolm, remain here and secure this chamber. We'll use the secret passage behind the eastern bookcase to access the tunnel network. If we're not back by dawn, alert the council elders, only those you personally trust. Malcolm bowed deeply. May the moon guide your path, my king. The entrance to the tunnel system lay behind an ornate bookcase in the eastern wall of the council chamber. Thorn activated the hidden mechanism, causing the bookcase to slide silently aside and reveal a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. Lyra peered into the gloom, her enhanced werewolf vision allowing her to see the ancient steps winding downward. Where do these tunnels lead? Everywhere beneath the fortress, Thorn explained, retrieving a small crystal lantern from a nearby shelf. The crystal glowed with a soft blue light when activated, illuminating the passage without the smoke or flickering of traditional flame. They were constructed by the first Alpha Kings as escape routes and secret passages for times of siege. Most have been forgotten or sealed over the centuries, but I had Malcolm map the remaining accessible sections when I became Crown Prince. Gareth examined the tunnel entrance with a mix of recognition and wariness. These were off limits even to the Royal Guard during my service. How did you learn of them? My father showed me when I was 12, Thorn replied, a hint of nostalgia softening his normally stern expression. He said a king should always know how to reach his people, even when conventional paths are blocked. They descended the staircase in single file, Thorn leading with the crystal lantern, Lyra following closely, and Gareth bringing up the rear. The air grew cooler as they descended, carrying the scent of damp stone and ancient earth. After several minutes of careful progress, the staircase ended at a circular chamber with 5 tunnel entrances branching in different directions. Thorn gestured to the second tunnel from the right. This one leads beneath the northern section of the fortress. We'll need to be absolutely silent from this point forward. Sound carries strangely in these tunnels. Whispers can sometimes be heard hundreds of feet away, while normal conversation fades after just a few yards. They entered the tunnel, which was narrow enough that Thorn and Gareth had to duck their heads in places. Lyra, smaller than the men, moved more easily through the confined space. The crystal lantern cast eerie blue shadows on the rough-hewn walls, transforming ordinary rock formations into menacing shapes that seemed to reach toward them as they passed. As they progressed deeper into the tunnel network, Lyra felt a strange pressure building in her mind, like the heaviness before a storm. Instinctively, she reached for the mate bond, sending her thoughts along its golden thread. Something feels wrong. Do you feel it too? Thorn's response came immediately, his mental voice clear despite their silent physical progress. Yes, there's magic ahead, old magic. They rounded a bend in the tunnel and came upon an unexpected sight, runes carved into the stone walls, floor, and ceiling, forming a complete circle that blocked their path. The runes glowed with a faint, silvery light that pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm. Gareth inhaled sharply. A warding circle, ancient. These weren't here 30 years ago. Thorn studied the runes carefully, his expression grave. No, they're recent, within the last few years at most. He crouched to examine one particular symbol more closely. This is the royal seal, but subtly altered. Someone with access to the royal archives created this ward. Victor? Lyra suggested. Possibly, or someone else in Celine's service. Thorn straightened, his jaw set with determination. Regardless, we need to pass. The northern guardhouse is just beyond this section. Lyra approached the warding circle, drawn by an inexplicable sense of familiarity. The runes seemed almost to sing to her, a melody just beyond the range of hearing. Without conscious thought, she reached toward one of the glowing symbols. Lyra, wait, Gareth began, alarm evident in his voice. But her fingers had already made contact with the carved stone. Instead of the magical backlash they all expected, the rune beneath her touch flared briefly brighter, then faded to a warm golden hue that matched the color of her bond with Thorn. One by one, the other runes in the circle followed suit, transforming from silver to gold. "How did you do that?" Gareth asked, astonishment clear in his whispered question. Lyra shook her head, equally surprised. "I don't know, it just felt right, like the runes recognized me somehow." "They did recognize you," Thorn said softly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "These wards weren't meant to keep everyone out. They were designed to allow specific individuals to pass, likely Celine and her closest allies. And you, as her daughter, share enough of her essence to trigger the recognition." "So we can pass safely?" Gareth confirmed. "Let's find out." Thorn stepped deliberately into the warding circle, then through it to the tunnel beyond. When no magical defense activated, he nodded to the others. "It seems Lyra's blood connection to Celine has given us an unexpected advantage." They continued through the tunnels with renewed caution, aware that they had passed through a magical barrier that might have alerted its creator to their presence. The tunnel began to slope upward, and soon they could hear the faint sounds of movement and voices above them. Thorn extinguished the crystal lantern, leaving them in near total darkness except for the ambient glow from another rune-marked doorway ahead. He gestured for complete silence, then led them to what appeared to be a dead end. Placing his palm against a specific stone, he pushed gently. A section of the wall rotated silently, revealing a hidden observation chamber. Through narrow slits in the stone, they could see into what appeared to be the lower level of the northern guardhouse. The room below was sparsely furnished with a heavy wooden table, several chairs, and wall-mounted torches that cast flickering shadows. Victor stood with his back to them, speaking to a small group of guards. Rowan was bound to a chair in the center of the room, his face bloodied, but his expression defiant. "Her ladyship was most specific," Victor was saying, his voice carrying clearly to their hiding place. "The northern pine wolf is to remain unharmed beyond what was necessary to subdue him. She needs him intact for tomorrow night's ritual." "What about the girl and the king?" one of the guards asked. "They'll come for their friend. Her ladyship is counting on it. That's why we've left the tunnel wards unaltered, despite knowing about the breach." Victor smiled coldly, revealing his complete complicity in Celine's plans. "When they arrive, we'll be waiting." Thorn's expression darkened at this confirmation of Victor's betrayal. Through their bond, Lyra could feel his anger, tightly controlled but burning hot beneath his calm exterior. "They're expecting us," she sent through the bond. "This could be a trap." "It is definitely a trap," Thorn replied, "but not one set for three of us. They're expecting only you and me. Gareth is our unexpected advantage." Understanding the plan without need for further explanation, Gareth drew his sword silently and nodded to Thorn. The unspoken strategy was clear. Thorn and Lyra would enter openly from another direction, drawing attention while Gareth remained hidden, ready to strike from behind. They retreated from the observation chamber and continued along the tunnel until reaching another junction. Thorn pointed to a ladder built into the wall that led to a trapdoor above. "This emerges in a storage room adjacent to the main guardhouse chamber," he whispered. "Gareth, remain in the tunnel system. When you hear us engage Victor, circle back to the observation chamber and wait for the right moment to intervene." Gareth clasped Thorn's forearm in the traditional warrior's grip. "Protect my daughter, Your Majesty." "With my life," Thorn promised, the solemnity of an Alpha King's oath resonating in his deep voice. As Gareth disappeared back into the darkness of the tunnel, Thorn turned to Lyra. "Are you ready?" Lyra took a deep breath, centering herself in the golden warmth of their bond. "Yes, whatever happens, we face it together." Thorn's normally stern expression softened momentarily. "Together," he agreed, then began climbing the ladder. The trapdoor opened silently, well-maintained despite its secretive nature. They emerged into a small storage room filled with weapons, armor, and provisions. Thorn led the way to the door, pausing to listen for movement outside before slowly turning the handle. The corridor beyond was empty, lit by wall-mounted torches at regular intervals. They moved swiftly but silently toward the main chamber, where Victor and his conspirators held Rowan. As they approached, Thorn straightened to his full height, assuming the commanding presence of the Alpha King. Lyra stayed close beside him, drawing courage from his unwavering resolve. Without hesitation, Thorn pushed open the door to the main chamber, striding in as if he had every right to be there, which, as king, he did. Victor and his guards spun to face them, momentary surprise giving way to smug satisfaction on the commander's scarred face. "Your Majesty," Victor said with a mocking bow, "how kind of you to save us the trouble of hunting you down." Thorne surveyed the room with regal disdain. "Commander Victor, I see treason has been added to your list of accomplishments." "Treason?" Victor affected an expression of wounded innocence. "I serve the true power of our world, my king, as you would too, if you understood what approaches." Rowan, still bound to the chair, looked up at Lyra with a mixture of relief and fear. "Don't listen to him. They're planning something for the full moon, something involving you specifically." One of the guards struck Rowan hard across the face. "Silence, dog!" Thorne's eyes flashed with controlled fury. "You strike a member of my mate's pack in my presence? You forget yourself, guardsman." Victor moved to stand between Thorne and Rowan. "Your mate is not what you think she is, Your Majesty. She is the daughter of the most powerful witch our world has ever known. The vessel for a transformation that will usher in a new age for our kind." "I know exactly who and what Lyra is," Thorne replied, his voice steady. "More importantly, I know what she chooses to be. Something Celine never understood. That power without compassion is merely tyranny dressed in magical trappings." Victor's expression hardened. "Her ladyship predicted you would be difficult. Fortunately, she provided means to ensure your cooperation." He withdrew a small silver object from within his tunic. The mirror of truth, its ornate frame glinting in the torchlight. "This fascinating artifact shows not just truth, but possibilities. Would you like to see what becomes of your precious 7 kingdoms if you continue to resist?" Without waiting for a response, Victor turned the mirror toward them. Its surface swirled with dark energy, no longer the reflective glass Lyra remembered, but a window into nightmare visions. Forests burning, werewolves fighting each other in bloody civil war, human armies marching with silver weapons, and the royal fortress lying in ruins. "This is what awaits if you defy her ladyship," Victor declared. "Destruction, chaos, the end of everything we've built over centuries." Thorne remained unmoved. "The mirror shows possibilities, not certainties. It can be manipulated by the will of the one who holds it, especially when that one serves a power like Celine." Victor's confident smile faltered slightly. "You understand less than you think, Alpha King. The mirror shows truth to those with eyes to see it. And the truth is, her ladyship cannot be stopped. The celestial alignment comes tomorrow night. The ritual will proceed. The only variable is how many must die in the process." While Victor focused on Thorne, Lyra had been scanning the room, locating each guard's position and searching for any sign of Gareth. Through a narrow gap in the stone wall behind Victor, she caught a glimpse of movement, her adoptive father, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Where is Celine now?" Lyra asked, deliberately drawing attention to herself. "If she's so powerful, why doesn't she face us directly?" Victor turned to her, contempt evident in his scarred features. "Her ladyship conserves her strength for the ritual. Though I must say she'll be disappointed by how little you've developed your inherent gifts. The daughter of Celine should command far greater power than you've displayed. Perhaps because I was raised by people who valued love over power," Lyra retorted, "something Celine has never understood." Victor laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Love, the eternal excuse of the weak. Your mother discarded such limiting sentiments decades ago, and look what she has achieved. Eternal youth, mastery of magics thought lost for centuries, the loyalty of those wise enough to recognize ascendant power. All that power," Thorne observed calmly, "and yet she sends others to do her bidding. Tell me, Commander, what reward has she promised you for your betrayal? A position in her new order? Extended life? Or simply the pleasure of vengeance against a system you've secretly resented for years?" A flash of something, perhaps doubt, crossed Victor's face before his expression hardened once more. "I serve the future, Your Majesty, something you refuse to see despite it standing directly before you." "I see it perfectly well," Thorne replied. "I simply reject the notion that true progress comes through tyranny, betrayal, and blood sacrifice." Victor's patience visibly thinned. "Enough philosophical debates. Her ladyship awaits, and the hour grows late." He gestured to his guards. "Secure them both. Kill the northern pine wolf. We have what we needed from him." As the guards moved to obey, Thorn caught Lyra's eye and sent a single word through their bond. Now. In the moment of perfect synchronization that followed, several things happened simultaneously. Thorn lunged forward with supernatural speed, disarming the nearest guard and hurling him into two others. Lyra dropped to the floor, rolling beneath a guard's grasping hands and coming up behind him to deliver a precise strike to the back of his knee. And Gareth burst from his hiding place, sword flashing in the torchlight as he cut through the ropes binding Rowan to the chair. Victor, momentarily stunned by the coordinated attack, recovered quickly. He drew his own sword, a wicked blade of dark metal that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light, and advanced on Thorn. "I had hoped to deliver you alive," Victor snarled, "but dead will suffice. Her ladyship can extract what she needs from your corpse just as easily." The clash of their blades rang throughout the chamber as Guard fought against King. Despite his age, Victor moved with the deadly precision of decades of combat experience. Thorn matched him blow for blow, his greater strength balanced by Victor's cunning and willingness to fight dishonorably. Lyra fought her way toward the mirror of truth, which Victor had placed on the table when drawing his sword. Two guards blocked her path, their expressions grim but determined. Unlike Victor, these men showed hesitation in attacking one recognized by ancient magic as their king's true mate. "Stand aside," Lyra commanded, channeling every ounce of authority she had observed in Thorn. "You face the Alpha Queen. This is your only warning." One guard faltered, his sword lowering slightly. The other pressed forward, swinging his blade in a vicious arc toward Lyra's head. She ducked beneath the strike and surged upward inside his guard, driving the heel of her hand into his chin with enhanced werewolf strength. His head snapped back, and he crumpled unconscious to the floor. The remaining guard dropped his sword and raised his hands in surrender. "I yield, my lady. I was following orders, but I want no part in harming the Twin Moon Blessed." Across the chamber, Gareth and a now freed Rowan fought back-to-back against the remaining guards. Rowan, despite his injuries, moved with the fluid grace of a born warrior, compensating for his weakened state with precise, economical movements. Thorn and Victor remained locked in their deadly duel, moving around the chamber in a lethal dance of steel and skill. A lucky strike from Victor opened a shallow cut along Thorn's forearm, drawing first blood. The commander smiled in savage triumph. "My blade is coated with wolfsbane extract," Victor taunted. "Not enough to kill you immediately, but sufficient to slow your reflexes, dull your senses. How long before the mighty Alpha King falls to his knees?" Indeed, Lyra could see through their on that Thorn was fighting not just Victor, but the spreading poison. His movements, while still formidable, had lost their supernatural quickness. His breathing had grown labored, and a sheen of sweat covered his face. Seizing the opportunity while Victor focused on Thorn, Lyra lunged for the mirror of truth. Her fingers closed around its ornate frame, and immediately she felt its power respond to her touch. The surface swirled with golden marmite, no longer showing the dark visions Victor had conjured, but instead revealing glimpses of a castle on a frozen mountain peak. Celine's stronghold. "The mirror!" Victor cried, suddenly aware of what Lyra had done. "Return it, girl, or watch your king D where he stands." To emphasize his threat, Victor pressed his attack on Thorn with renewed ferocity. The poison was clearly taking effect. Thorn's parries came slower, his counters less powerful. Through their bond, Lyra could feel his determination to keep fighting despite the growing weakness in his limbs. Without conscious thought, Lyra raised the mirror, focusing her will into it as instinct guided her. "Show me how to save him," she commanded. The mirror's surface swirled again, and in its depths, Lyra saw herself placing her hand over Thorn's wound, a golden light flowing from her palm to neutralize the poison. She saw the mate bond between them strengthening, becoming a conduit for healing energy. Understanding what she needed to do, Lyra tossed the mirror to Rowan, who caught it one-handed while fending off a guard with his other arm. "Keep it safe," she called, then ran toward Thorn and Victor. As she approached, Victor saw her coming and adjusted his attack, aiming a vicious strike at Thorn's unprotected side. Thorn, slowed by the poison, couldn't dodge completely. The dark blade sliced through his tunic, drawing a line of crimson across his ribs. Lyra felt the pain through their bond as if it were her own. Rage and protective instincts surged within her, unleashing something she hadn't known she possessed. The golden warmth of the mate bond flared like a supernova, and with it came power, raw, ancient, and undeniably her birthright. Golden light erupted from Lyra's hands as she thrust them toward Victor. The commander was hurled backward as if struck by an invisible battering ram, his sword flying from his grasp. He slammed into the stone wall with bone-crushing force, then slid to the floor, unconscious or worse. The remaining guards, seeing their leader fall, threw down their weapons and surrendered. The battle was over as suddenly as it had begun. Lyra rushed to Thorn's side as he sank to one knee, the wolfsbane poison spreading visibly through his veins in dark lines beneath his skin. She placed her hands over his wounds as the mirror had shown her, focusing on the golden bond between them. "What are you doing?" Thorn asked, his voice strained with pain. "Saving you," Lyra replied simply. "Trust me." She closed her eyes, channeling the newly awakened power within her. Golden light flowed from her palms into Thorn's wounds. Where it touched, the dark lines of poison receded, replaced by the healthy flush of accelerated healing. Gareth and Rowan watched in awe as Lyra demonstrated healing abilities far beyond what anyone in the Northern Pine Pack had ever displayed. This was not just her grandmother's gift amplified. This was something else entirely, the innate magic of Selena's bloodline, but turned toward healing rather than harm. When the last traces of poison had been neutralized, Lyra sat back, suddenly exhausted. The surge of power had taken more from her than she'd realized. Thorn caught her before she could collapse, his strength already returning thanks to her intervention. "How did you do that?" he asked, genuine wonder in his voice. "The mirror showed me the way," Lyra explained tiredly. "But the power was already there, inside me. I just never knew how to access it before." "Selene's daughter indeed," Gareth murmured, equal parts proud and concerned, but with Morgana's heart. Rowan approached, still holding the mirror of truth. "What do we do now? Victor's men are subdued, but Selena's still out there, preparing for tomorrow night's ritual." Thorn rose, helping Lyra to her feet. "Now we use the advantage we've gained. The mirror has shown Lyra her innate abilities. Perhaps it can show us how to defeat Selene as well." They secured Victor and the guards who had refused to surrender, leaving them bound in the same chamber where Rowan had been held. The guards who had yielded were placed under the supervision of Malcolm, whom Thorn summoned through one of the loyal servants. In the privacy of the royal council chamber once more, Thorn, Lyra, Gareth, and Rowan gathered around the Mirror of Truth. Malcolm joined them, bringing healing herbs for their various injuries and reports that the fortress remained largely unaware of the night's events. "The majority of the royal guard is not involved in Victor's conspiracy," Malcolm assured them. "I've discreetly alerted the captains I trust most to be vigilant for any unusual activity without revealing the full situation." "Good," Thorn approved. "The fewer who know about Selene's plan, the better our chances of surprising her tomorrow night." Lyra held the Mirror of Truth in her hands, studying its ornate silver frame and the strange symbols that decorated it. "How do we use it to find Selene's weakness? When I asked it to show me how to heal you, it responded to my need, but I don't know if I can control it so precisely again." The Book of Duality mentioned that the mirror responds most powerfully to those with a direct blood connection to its creator, Thorn said. "As Selene's daughter, you have that connection. But the book also suggested that the mirror's full potential is unlocked when two magically linked individuals use it together. The mate bond," Lyra realized. "That's why Selene wanted it so badly. Not just because it shows truth, but because she knew we might discover how to use it against her." Thorn nodded, extending his hands. "Shall we try?" Lyra placed the mirror between them, each holding one side of its frame. The moment they touched it simultaneously, the surface began to glow with an intensity that forced everyone else to shield their eyes. Within the golden light, images formed and dissolved in rapid succession. Selene in her castle, preparing a ritual circle, the full moon rising over the fortress, a chamber deep beneath the royal quarters that none of them recognized, and finally a strange crystal pendant split precisely in half, the two pieces separated but yearning to reconnect. When the light faded, Lyra and Thorn looked at each other, understanding dawning in both their expressions. "You saw it too?" Lyra asked. "The pendant of duality," Thorn confirmed. "Split in two when the sundering ritual was performed." Malcolm's eyes widened in recognition. The Royal Archives mentions such an artifact, a crystal vessel created to contain excess magical energy during dangerous spells. If it was used during the ritual that separated Morgana and Celine, then it contains the key to reversing the process, Gareth finished, or preventing Celine from completing her version of the reversal. The mirror showed us where to find one half, Thorne said, in a chamber beneath the royal quarters, a chamber I've never seen before. I know where it is, Malcolm said quietly, the chamber of necessity. It only appears when the need is greatest. The entrance is said to manifest in the Alpha King's private quarters when ancient magic recognizes a threat to the royal bloodline. Thorne rose immediately. Then we must go there now. The full moon rises tomorrow night. We need every advantage we can gather before Celine arrives. As they made their way to the royal quarters, Lyra felt a strange vibration through the mate bond, as if their connection were being tested or stretched in some way. Glancing at Thorne, she could tell he felt it too. Something's happening, she sent through their mental link. The bond feels different, stronger, Thorne replied, his mental voice clearer than ever before, as if our shared purpose is intensifying the connection. The royal quarters occupied the highest tower of the fortress, offering spectacular views of the surrounding mountains and forests. Thorne's private chamber was surprisingly austere for an Alpha King, furnished with simple elegance rather than ostentatious luxury. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, while bookshelves lined another. A sitting area arranged before a stone hearth occupied the center of the circular room. The chamber of necessity, Malcolm explained, is said to exist in a space between spaces. Its entrance appears when summoned by true need in the blood of the royal line. Thorne moved to the center of the room, his expression contemplative. How is it summoned? The ancient texts are not entirely clear, Malcolm admitted. They speak of blood freely given in protection of the realm and the call of honest hearts united in purpose. Lyra stepped forward, the mirror of truth still in her hands. Maybe we don't need to summon it. Maybe we just need to see what's already there. She held up the mirror. This shows truth. If the chamber exists, perhaps the mirror can reveal its entrance to us. Thorne nodded in agreement, joining her in the center of the room. Once again, they held the mirror between them, both touching its silver frame. This time, instead of visions within the mirror itself, a beam of golden light shot from its surface, illuminating a section of the stone floor that appeared completely ordinary. There, Thorne said, moving toward the illuminated area. As he approached, runes that had been invisible began to glow faintly in the stone, forming a perfect circle approximately 3 feet in diameter. Blood freely given in protection of the realm. Without hesitation, Thorne drew a small knife from his belt and made a shallow cut across his palm. He knelt and pressed his bleeding hand to the center of the runic circle. I, Thorne, Alpha King of the 7 Kingdoms, call upon the chamber of necessity to reveal itself in defense of our people. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lyra felt a tugging sensation through their bond, an unspoken invitation. Understanding instinctively what was needed, she knelt beside Thorne and cut her own palm, placing it atop his so their blood mingled. And I, Lyra, twin moon blessed and mate to the Alpha King, join in this call. The moment their blood combined, the runic circle blazed with blinding light. The stone within the circle simply vanished, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into depths unknown. A cool breeze carrying the scent of ancient magic wafted upward from the opening. The chamber of necessity has answered, Malcolm whispered, awe evident in his voice. This has not happened in 7 generations. Thorne rose, helping Lyra to her feet. Malcolm, Gareth, Rowan, remain here and guard the entrance. Lyra and I will descend alone. Your Majesty, Gareth protested, the danger is precisely why we must go alone. Thorne interrupted gently. The chamber responds to the royal bloodline and those connected to it. The fewer who enter, the more clearly it will reveal what we seek. Reluctantly, the others agreed to remain behind. Thorne took the crystal lantern from earlier, its blue light providing just enough illumination to navigate the narrow spiral staircase. Lyra followed close behind him, the mirror of truth clutched in her hands, its surface occasionally flashing with brief glimpses of possible futures. The staircase descended far deeper than seemed possible given the fortress's position atop a mountain. After several minutes of careful progress, They emerged into a perfectly circular chamber carved from living rock. The walls, floor, and dome ceiling were polished to a mirror-like finish, reflecting the blue light of Thorn's lantern in mesmerizing patterns. At the center of the chamber stood a simple stone pedestal, and upon it rested a small object that gleamed with inner fire. Thorn approached the pedestal slowly, respect evident in his careful movements. "The half-pendant of duality," he said softly. The object was exactly as they had seen in the mirror's vision. One half of a crystal pendant, cut or broken with unnatural precision. Despite being only half of the original artifact, it radiated power that both of them could feel even from several paces away. "It's beautiful," Lyra observed, moving to stand beside Thorn. The crystal was clear as the purest water at its edges, but its core contained swirling colors that shifted continuously, predominantly blues, greens, and silvers, the colors of healing and protection. "These must be the energies from Morgana's half of the soul, which means the other half, in Celine's possession, contains the darker aspects," Thorn concluded. "Ambition, power, aggression." Lyra reached toward the pendant, then hesitated. "Should I touch it? It belonged to my grandmother, or half of my grandmother at least." Thorn nodded encouragingly. "The chamber revealed itself to both of us. I believe the pendant is meant for you to claim." Taking a deep breath, Lyra gently lifted the half pendant from its resting place. The moment her fingers closed around the crystal, a surge of warmth flowed up her arm and spread throughout her body. Images flashed through her mind, Morgana as a young woman, strong and vibrant, the ritual that had torn one soul into two bodies, the decades of separation and longing, and beneath it all, a profound sense of love and forgiveness. Tears streamed down Lyra's face as she experienced emotions that were not her own, yet somehow felt deeply familiar. She forgave her, she whispered in wonder. All those years, even after the exile, the conflict, the hatred, Morgana forgave Celine. She understood that they were two halves of the same whole, neither complete without the other. Thorn watched with concern as Lyra absorbed the pendant's revelations. "What else do you see?" "The ritual Celine plans to perform. It's not just about becoming whole again. It's about power. She believes that by channeling your Alpha King energy through me, she can recombine the sundered halves on her terms. With her dominant, she would gain not only wholeness, but unprecedented magical power." "And what would happen to you in this process?" Thorn asked, though his expression suggested he already feared the answer. "I would cease to exist as myself," Lyra confirmed quietly. "My body would become Celine's vessel, my consciousness absorbed or destroyed. And you would be sacrificed for my power," Thorn finished grimly. "As I suspected. But now that we have the half pendant, we have leverage, a bargaining chip at the very least." Lyra studied the crystal in her palm, feeling its steady pulse of ancient magic. "It's more than that. I think it might be a way to heal rather than destroy, to reunite the sundered soul as it was meant to be, not as Celine intends. How? I'm not sure yet, but the emotions I felt from this half of the pendant weren't hatred or vengeance. They were forgiveness, acceptance, the desire for wholeness through healing, rather than dominance." Lyra closed her fingers around the crystal, feeling its power resonate with the mate bond she shared with Thorn. "We need to learn more before Celine arrives tomorrow night." As if in response to her words, the mirror of truth in her other hand began to glow once more. Images formed in its depths. Celine preparing to depart her mountain fortress, surrounded by loyal followers. Victor regaining consciousness in his cell, a malevolent smile spreading across his face. The full moon beginning its rise over the eastern mountains, its light unnaturally intense. "She's coming sooner than we thought," Thorn said, alarm evident in his voice. "The ritual doesn't require the peak of the full moon, just its rise, and that begins at sunset tomorrow." "We need to prepare," Lyra agreed. "But how do we fight someone with 50 years of magical research and power at her disposal?" Thorn's expression hardened with resolve. "By using what she doesn't have, the mate bond between us, Morgana's half of the pendant, and most importantly, the strength that comes from protecting those we love, rather than seeking power for its own sake. They ascended the spiral staircase, the half-pendant of duality secure around Lyra's neck, and the mirror of truth still occasionally flashing with prophetic glimpses. Upon reaching the royal quarters, they found Gareth, Rowan, and Malcolm in tense discussion. "Victor has escaped," Malcolm informed them grimly. "Two guards were found dead outside his cell. The others who were detained with him remain imprisoned and claim no knowledge of how he freed himself." "Celine," Thorne surmised. "She's reached out to her most loyal servant, probably through the same kind of projection she used earlier." "The fortress must be secured," Gareth insisted. "If Victor has escaped, he'll be gathering his co-conspirators, preparing for Celine's arrival." "No," Thorne countered, surprising them all. "We will not lock down the fortress. Instead, we will proceed as if nothing is amiss. Let Victor believe his escape has gone unnoticed. Let Celine think her arrival will catch us unprepared." "A trap?" Rowan asked, approval evident in his voice. "Of sorts, though not the kind involving guards and weapons." Thorne looked at Lyra, communicating silently through their bond. "We're going to offer Celine exactly what she wants, but on our terms, not hers." Lyra nodded in understanding, her hand rising to touch the half-pendant concealed beneath her clothing. "The ritual she plans requires specific circumstances: the full moon, the proper location, specific participants. If we control those elements rather than allowing her to dictate them, we might achieve healing instead of destruction," Thorne finished. The remaining hours before sunset were spent in careful preparation. Thorne met with his most trusted council members, briefing them on a carefully edited version of events. Loyal guards were discreetly positioned throughout the fortress, with specific instructions to observe and report but not engage unless innocent lives were directly threatened. Lyra spent time with the Mirror of Truth and the Book of Duality, searching for insights into the ritual Celine planned to perform. With each passing hour, her understanding of her unique position in this conflict deepened. She was not merely a pawn in Celine's game, but a linchpin connecting multiple forces: daughter to Celine, grandchild to Morgana, mate to the Alpha King, and vessel for the potential healing of a sundered soul. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Thorne and Lyra made their final preparations in the great ceremonial hall at the heart of the fortress. Circular in design, with a domed ceiling featuring an aperture that would perfectly frame the rising full moon, the hall had been the site of royal rituals for 13 generations. "Are you certain about this?" Gareth asked, concern evident in his voice as he helped arrange the ceremonial items Lyra had requested. "You're placing yourself at tremendous risk." "We all are," Lyra acknowledged, "but this feels right. The half-pendant, the mirror, the mate bond, they've all been guiding us toward this moment. This chance to heal what was broken, rather than perpetuate the cycle of vengeance and power-seeking." "Your faith gives me courage," Gareth said softly. "Whatever happens tonight, know that I could not be prouder of the woman you've become." Lyra embraced the man who had raised her, who had protected her from the truth until she was ready to bear it. "You will always be my father," she whispered. "Blood matters less than the love you've shown me all these years." As they separated, a commotion at the hall's main entrance drew their attention. Malcolm entered, his expression grave. "They're here. Celine and Victor have breached the eastern gate. They bring perhaps 20 followers with them." Thorne, who had been consulting with his most trusted captains, dismissed them with final instructions before approaching. "Are the council members and other non-combatants secure?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Malcolm confirmed. "The evacuation proceeded as planned. Only those who volunteered to remain are still within the fortress." "Good. Then we are as prepared as we can be." Thorne turned to Lyra, his stormy eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made the mate bond between them pulse with golden warmth. "Last chance to reconsider." Lyra shook her head, resolution firming in her voice. "This is the path we must walk. Together." The great doors at the far end of the ceremonial hall swung open, propelled by an invisible force. Framed in the entrance stood Celine, exactly as she had appeared in her projection. Youthful, beautiful, and radiating cold power. Victor stood at her right hand, his scarred face twisted in triumphant anticipation. Behind them came their followers, a mix of werewolves from various packs, all bearing the same fanatical light in their eyes. "How kind of you to prepare the hall for our arrival," Celine called, her voice echoing in the vast space. Almost as if you were expecting us. We were, Thorn replied calmly. The mirror of truth revealed your coming. Celine's perfect features registered brief surprise before smoothing back into confident composure. Ah, the mirror, a useful tool, though limited by the vision of its wielder. I trust you found it. Found educational. Her gaze shifted to Lyra, hungry assessment in her midnight eyes. My daughter, at last we meet in the flesh. How you've grown since I last held you. Lyra fought the instinctive shiver that ran through her at being claimed so possessively. You gave up any right to call me daughter when you tried to use me as a sacrifice for your ambitions. Sacrifice? Celine laughed, the sound like crystal chimes in winter. My dear, I'm offering you transcendence, the chance to be part of something greater than your limited mortal existence could ever achieve on its own. By destroying who I am, Lyra countered, by erasing my consciousness, my autonomy, my very self. Celine waved a dismissive hand. Details, semantics. You speak of yourself as if it were some precious, unique thing. But what are you really? A temporary arrangement of flesh and spirit, doomed to decay like all mortal things. What I offer is eternity. As she spoke, Celine advanced into the hall, her followers spreading out behind her in a practice formation. Victor directed them with small gestures, positioning them strategically around the circular space. Thorn observed their movements with the tactical assessment of a born warrior. Through their bond, Lyra could feel him analyzing angles of attack, lines of retreat, identifying the most dangerous among Celine's followers. You speak of eternity, Thorn said, drawing Celine's attention back to him. Yet even your unnatural youth will eventually fade. The magic sustaining you consumes more energy with each passing year, doesn't it? That's the real reason for your urgency. Not just the celestial alignment, but your own dwindling time. A flash of rage crossed Celine's perfect features before she controlled it. Clever king. Yes, all magic has its price. Mine has been significant. But after tonight, such concerns will be irrelevant. With my soul made whole again, and your alpha power added to my own, I will transcend such limitations forever. The sun had now fully set, and through the aperture in the dome ceiling, the first silvery light of the rising full moon began to shine down into the center of the hall. Celine's eyes gleamed with anticipation as she noted the beam of moonlight forming exactly where Lyra and Thorn stood. You've positioned yourselves perfectly, she observed with a predatory smile, almost as if you're offering yourselves willingly. How unexpected, yet how convenient. We are offering ourselves, Lyra confirmed, her voice steady despite the fear fluttering in her chest. But not as sacrifices, as participants in healing, not destruction. Confusion flickered across Celine's face. Healing, there is nothing to heal, only power to claim, destiny to fulfill. Lyra withdrew the half-pendant of duality from beneath her clothing, allowing it to catch the moonlight. The crystal blazed with inner fire, its swirling colors casting prismatic patterns across the hall's stone floor. Celine froze, recognition and covetousness battling in her expression. The half-pendant, Morgana's half. Her hand went to her own throat, drawing forth an identical crystal half from beneath her robes, where Lyra's contained swirling blues, greens, and silvers. Celine's pulsed with reds, golds, and midnight blacks. You think possessing half the artifact gives you leverage? Not leverage, Lyra replied. Understanding. Your half contains ambition, power, aggression, all necessary qualities, but destructive when unbalanced by compassion, healing, and love. Mine contains those balancing forces. Neither half is complete without the other, just as neither you nor Morgana was whole after the sundering. So you acknowledge the need for reunification, Celine said, a hint of confusion entering her voice. Yet you resist my method, because your method requires destruction. Morgana's half of this pendant has shown me another way. Lyra stepped forward into the beam of moonlight now illuminating the center of the hall. Not domination of one half over the other, but true integration. Not sacrifice, but sharing. Celine's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What exactly are you proposing? Complete the ritual as planned, Lyra said, causing gasps from Gareth and Rowan. Use the full moon's power. Use the celestial alignment. Use the ancient circle already prepared. She gestured to the runic markings Thorn had discreetly etched into the stone floor, following the pattern revealed by the mirror of truth. But instead of channeling the Alpha King's power through me as a sacrifice, accept the freely offered energy of our mate bond. The mate bond, Celine repeated, genuine surprise evident in her voice. You would use that to fuel the ritual? It's the most powerful magical connection in our world, Thorn said, moving to stand beside Lyra in the moonlight. Freely given, founded on mutual respect and care rather than coercion or dominance. Exactly the kind of magic that could heal a sundered soul without destroying either half. Victor stepped forward, suspicion clear in his scarred features. This is a trick. They seek to disrupt the ritual, to deny you your rightful power. But Celine was staring at the half-pendant around Lyra's neck, an expression almost like longing breaking through her cold composure. Morgana's half, she whispered. After all these years. She took a step toward Lyra, then another, as if drawn by a force beyond her control. When she reached the edge of the moonlight, she hesitated, suddenly uncertain. If this fails, if this is indeed a trick, then you would still be stronger than either of us individually, Lyra pointed out. You've spent 50 years preparing for this moment. We've had days. The advantage remains yours. Something shifted in Celine's midnight eyes, a flicker of what might have been hope breaking through the cold ambition. Very well. We will attempt your method. But at the first sign of treachery, my followers will kill everyone in this hall except those necessary for the original ritual. Understood, Thorn agreed solemnly. Victor protested, but Celine silenced him with a sharp gesture. Prepare the circle. The moon reaches the critical position in moments. As Celine's followers hurried to arrange ceremonial items around the runic circle, Lyra felt the mate bond pulse stronger than ever before. Through it, she could sense Thorn's steady resolve, his absolute trust in her judgment despite the tremendous risk they were taking. Are you certain about this? He asked through their mental connection. Once the ritual begins, there may be no turning back. As certain as I can be, she replied. The half-pendant, the mirror, the book, all have shown fragments of this possibility. It feels right in a way that nothing else has. Gareth approached them, concern etched deeply in his features. Lyra, this is madness. You're placing yourself directly in Celine's power. No, Father, Lyra corrected gently. I'm placing myself between her power and her healing. Sometimes the most dangerous place is also the only place where true change can occur. The full moon now shone directly through the ceiling aperture, bathing the runic circle in silver radiance. Celine stepped into the moonlight, her half-pendant glowing with increasingly intense energy. She gestured for Lyra to join her in the circle's center. The Alpha King remains at the perimeter, Celine instructed. His energy will be drawn through the mate bond, but he must not enter the circle itself. Thorn nodded in understanding, taking position at the circle's edge directly behind Lyra. His presence was a solid comfort at her back as she stepped forward to face her birth mother in the ritual space. Celine began to speak in the ancient language of the first wolves, words of power that seemed to resonate in the very stones of the hall. As she chanted, the runic circle beneath their feet began to glow with silver fire, perfectly matching the moonlight from above. Now, Celine commanded, extending her hand, the half-pendant burning like a crimson star against her palm. Join your half to mine. Lyra removed her half-pendant, holding it before her. The two crystals seemed to strain toward each other, the magical energies within them swirling faster, brighter. When Lyra brought her half to meet Celine's, the two pieces connected with a sound like distant thunder. The complete pendant of duality blazed with light so intense that everyone in the hall was forced to shield their eyes. Within that radiance, Lyra felt something vast and ancient awaken. The original soul that had been torn asunder 50 years ago, yearning to be whole once more. Celine's triumphant laugh echoed through the hall. Yes, the reunification begins. Now, daughter, channel the Alpha King's power through our bond of blood. But instead of reaching for Thorn's energy, as Celine expected, Lyra closed her eyes and focused on the mate bond, that golden connection that had formed against all odds between her and the Alpha King. She felt its warmth responding, flowing through her, not as power to be used, but as strength to be shared. "What are you doing?" Celine demanded, sensing the deviation from her plan. "Draw his power through you as the vessel." "No," Lyra replied calmly. "I offer something greater than power taken by force. I offer healing freely given." Before Celine could react, Lyra channeled the golden energy of the mate bond directly into the reunited pendant of duality. The crystal absorbed the energy like a sponge, its swirling colors, red, gold, black, blue, green, silver, beginning to merge and harmonize rather than fight for dominance. "Stop this!" Celine cried, but her voice held more desperation than command. "This isn't what I planned." "Plans change," Lyra said softly. 50 years ago, a terrible mistake was made. A soul was sundered that should have remained whole. We're not stopping the reunification. We're ensuring it happens through healing, not destruction. The pendant blazed brighter, and within its depths, the combined essence of Morgana and Celine began to take form, not as two separate entities fighting for control, but as complementary aspects of a single integrated whole. The nurturing compassion of Morgana balanced the fierce ambition of Celine. The protective instincts of one complemented the powerful magic of the other. Celine gasped as she felt the change beginning within her. "What is happening to me?" "You're becoming whole," Lyra explained, maintaining her focus on channeling the mate bond's energy into the ritual. "Not by consuming Morgana's essence, but by reuniting with it properly. Not by sacrificing me, but by accepting the gift freely offered." Thorn, standing at the edge of the circle, added his strength to Lyra's through their bond. The golden energy flowing into the pendant intensified, accelerating the process of integration. Celine fell to her knees as the transformation racked her body with spasms of magical energy. Her midnight black hair began to streak with silver, not the silver of age but of balance, dark and light achieving harmony. Her obsidian eyes lightened, flecks of amber appearing within the darkness. "I feel her," Celine whispered in wonder. "Morgana, not fighting me, but joining me, completing me." The pendant pulsed one final time with blinding light, then shattered into countless glittering fragments that dissolved into pure energy. That energy flowed into Celine, lifting her from the ground in a column of radiance that combined all the colors that had swirled within both halves of the crystal. When the light finally faded, Celine, or the being that had been Celine, floated gently back to the ground. She appeared both younger and older than before, her features softer, yet somehow more regal. Power still radiated from her, but it was no longer the cold force of ambition untempered by compassion. Now it felt warm, balanced, whole. She opened her eyes, revealing irises that swirled with a perfect blend of midnight black and warm amber. "Lyra," she said, her voice containing echoes of both Celine's crystalline tones and Morgana's gentle warmth. "My child, what have you done?" "Helped heal what was broken," Lyra replied simply, "with Thorn's strength and the magic of our bond." The transformed woman looked around the hall, taking in Victor's shocked expression, Gareth's wary stance, the confused followers who had expected a very different outcome. "I remember everything," she said softly. "Both lives, both perspectives, the hatred and the love, the ambition and the nurturing, the exile and the belonging." She turned back to Lyra, tears shimmering in her remarkable eyes. "I am neither Celine nor Morgana now, yet I am both, whole for the first time in 50 years. "What shall we call you?" Thorn asked, moving to stand beside Lyra now that the ritual had completed. The woman considered for a moment. "I was Morvain before the sundering. It seems fitting to reclaim that name now that I am whole again." Victor stepped forward, his expression a mixture of confusion and anger. "My lady, this isn't what you promised. The Alpha King still lives. Your daughter still maintains her separate consciousness. Where is the power you were to claim?" Morvain regarded him with new eyes, seeing perhaps for the first time the naked ambition that had drawn Celine's half to him. "The power is here, Victor, but it's not what either of us expected. It's the power of wholeness, of balance. The original strength that I possessed before the sundering, amplified by 50 years of separate experiences." "This isn't what I fought for," Victor snarled, his hand going to the dark blade at his side. "This isn't what I sacrificed for." Before anyone could react, he drew his weapon and lunged not at Thorn or Lyra, but at Morvain herself. If you won't take the power that should be yours, then you don't deserve to exist at all. The blade never reached its target. Morvain raised a hand, and Victor froze in mid-lunge, suspended by invisible force. "Oh, Victor," she said, genuine sadness in her voice. "You never understood. It was never about power for power's sake. It was about being whole." With a gentle gesture, she disarmed him, the dark blade clattering harmlessly to the stone floor. "I release you from your oaths to me. All of you," she added, looking at her bewildered followers. "Return to your packs, your families, your lives. There will be no war, no new order, as Selim promised. Instead, there will be healing, beginning with myself." One by one, Selim's former adherents bowed awkwardly to both Morvain and Thorn, then filed out of the hall. Only Victor remained, his expression hardening into pure hatred as he realized his ambitions would never be fulfilled. "You'll regret this weakness," he spat. "All of you." "No, Victor," Morvain replied gently. "The only regret is that I led you down this path of bitterness. For that, I am truly sorry." Royal guards escorted the former commander away, leaving only Thorn, Lyra, Gareth, Rowan, Malcolm, and Morvain in the moonlit hall. "What happens now?" Gareth asked, still wary of the woman who had been both his greatest enemy and his daughter's grandmother. Morvain looked at Lyra with an expression of profound gratitude and sorrow. "Now I make amends, beginning with you, my child. I can never reclaim the years lost, the pain caused, but I can offer you the truth, my knowledge, and whatever support you wish to accept from me." Lyra studied the woman before her. Neither the cold, ambitious Selene nor the warm, nurturing Morgana, but something new yet ancient. "I think," she said carefully, "that we have much to learn from each other, and time now to do so properly." Thorn stepped forward, his royal authority evident in his bearing despite the absence of crown or formal regalia. "Morvain, once Selene and Morgana, you have much to answer for. Lives were lost due to your actions. The balance of our kingdoms was threatened." "I know," Morvain acknowledged, bowing her head in acceptance of his judgment. "I place myself at your mercy, Alpha King." Thorn was silent for a long moment, weighing justice against mercy, retribution against healing. Through their bond, Lyra could feel him considering multiple paths forward. "Your punishment," he finally declared, "will be to serve. The magic and knowledge you possess, both Selene's research and Morgana's healing wisdom, must be preserved for future generations. You will establish a new school of magical arts, teaching balance rather than dominance, integration rather than division." Relief and purpose dawned in Morvain's remarkable eyes. "A fitting sentence, Your Majesty. I accept it gladly." As the full moon reached its zenith above them, shining down through the ceiling aperture with blessed normality rather than ritual power, Lyra felt the mate bond with Thorn pulse with renewed strength and certainty. The crisis had passed, the sundered soul was healed, and the future, which had seemed so dark just hours ago, now stretched before them, filled with possibilities. "So," Thorn said softly, taking Lyra's hand in his as the others began to depart, giving them a moment of privacy. "Now that we've averted magical catastrophe and restored a sundered soul, what would you like to do next, future Alpha Queen?" Lyra smiled up at him, feeling for the first time the true potential of the bond they shared. "Learn," she replied simply. "Grow. Become the person worthy of standing beside you as an equal partner. And perhaps, when the time is right, discover exactly how powerful this mate bond of ours can truly become." Thorn's rare smile transformed his stern features, revealing the man behind the Alpha King's responsibility. "I can think of no better adventure, nor anyone I'd rather share it with." Above them, the full moon blessed their joined hands with silver light, while between them, the golden warmth of the mate bond promised a future where love and duty, power and compassion, strength and tenderness could exist in perfect harmonious balance.